Sound issues. So if people can speak clearly and into the microphone, then everybody in the room will be able to hear. And I'm hoping, Aaron, that you could just wave your hand if you stopped hearing me. Okay. So we've got a number of questions from the public as well as a range of items. So I was proposing to take the questions largely at the beginning, but Richard, one of the options, given that yours is specific to that item, is quite technical. It's whether or not you're happy to take it at the time of the item.
That's probably most sensible, actually, isn't it?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Because I mean, there's some detail to be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for that. So, first of all, apologies for absence. Any? No, the board is here. Second, then, minutes of the previous meeting. If I can take those. Graham?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to report an omission, unfortunately, from the minutes. John Latham asked a question at the Wilson Road item. Unfortunately, this hasn't been included in the minutes. It was acted as an omission, and I recommend that we amend the minutes to reflect the submission of that question.
Okay, and that comes up in question 8. Is this the page here? Okay, so we'll still have the question, because it also covers some other issues as well. So with that change, there was one matter I just mentioned, because the board has had some thoughts about one of the issues raised, amongst many of the issues that were raised at the last meeting, and that's on the timing of the meetings. So we've been consulting about whether to have, once we've gone through meetings that have already been scheduled, to actually reschedule our meetings to 4 o'clock. Partly because I think some members of the public rightly have asked that does sort of cut right in the middle of the day. I'm not saying it's ideal, but I hope that it helps people who are able then to come along, including people who need to earn a living. So we'll come back on that when we update the schedule of our meetings, but at the moment we're sticking with the next couple of meetings, at the time that we've got. Okay. Any declarations of interest in the items in front of us? People can declare interest at the time. No, thank you. So we move on to item 4, and if I could then move on to question 2. That's from Mal Schofield. He's here, but he's not yet. So maybe he'll come during the questions. Okay. Question 3 is from Antony Carpen.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone, chaps, Miss Sheridan. My question is something that I have gone on about probably for the past 2 years, and some of you will be absolutely sick of it, but because we haven't seen much movement on it, I'm going to ask it again. What plans do the City Deal authorities have for organising events specifically targeted at young people, children at school, college, and how do they plan on improving how their consultations will be coordinated with other important consultations going out at the same time, such as devolution in Cambridgeshire and site-specific works such as the Chisholm Bridge? And will councils be receptive to community groups and individuals that want to host consultation events in council-owned buildings and waive booking fees for such meetings? Just to give a little bit of context to this, on the board and the assembly we've got representatives from Cambridge University, we've got representatives from my old university, Anglia Ruskin, and we've got a representative from Cambridge Regional College who I believe is going to be getting a new principal. And when I gave evidence at the oral hearings not so long ago, I asked specifically those institutions represented to put on events for their students, and at the moment I have not seen any evidence of systematic engagement with young people. It is their futures, ladies and gentlemen. We must do better, because of all of the meetings that I have gone to do with the Greater Cambridge City Deal, even where there have been over 100 people attending those meetings, the number of people under the age of 25 has been smaller than the number of fingers on my hands. Ladies and gentlemen, you must do better than that, because I am sick and tired of having to raise this issue over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to ask Tanya Sheridan to respond. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of what we're doing to engage with schools and young people, we are using parent mail to make sure that schools, to make sure that parents and kids are aware of what's going on, and also using social media to reach a broader audience, including generations for whom social media is very much part of the day-to-day, although I think that is very much an intergenerational thing. We do, though, aspire to up the engagement. We are trying to do as much as we can, and acknowledge that young people are a really important audience and that we ought to be reaching out to them, particularly when we look at people who rely on bus travel. Some of them are the teenagers who need to get to school and to college, and so in providing better public transport, we are trying to help the teenagers of today as well as them as the residents, the working residents of tomorrow. In terms of coordination of consultations, when you have 3 councils with a very busy agenda, we will make sure that there is awareness of, that when we're consulting the audience, they are aware of other consultations. So there is a link between the city deal and devolution, in that devolution builds on a good record of cooperation about the city deal. As regards the question about community events, the principle for 3 councils is very much of welcoming community events and of accessibility. Of course, there are costs that have to be covered in terms of running meetings, facilities, particularly when facilities are used out of hours. But the 3 councils can provide more written information on the use of community facilities, if that would be helpful.
To respond more directly, in addition to what Tony said, I'm very happy to meet you and for us to put together an event which is focused on young people, and then we can see how we take it from there. So I think if we certainly do on a couple of issues need to engage wider, and if you and I meet, then we can discuss how we could do an event. And obviously part of it is, well, what are the transport currently for young people in the city? How do they get both to school, whenever they're going out? And in that context, then obviously thinking about the future, but also just their input into the existing schemes. As you'll know, it's a sort of admission also that councils themselves don't engage particularly well, and it's only been when we've got involved in working with particular schools or sixth form colleges that we've really listened. So this is part of a wider problem that councils have, and I'm committing myself to one event to start with, and we can discuss how to best shape that.
I think if the council are organising an event, then the university will support that. Many of our youngsters, thinking about it, are only in Cambridge for a short while during term, but we can arrange some more information for them. And I agree, that would be very useful.
Okay.
Do I get a follow-up? Or no?
Well, I think that the follow-up will be after the meeting.
Right, okay.
But thank you. And you're right to raise it, and I don't think public authorities generally think this through properly. So the next question is from Wendy Blythe. The report. Sorry, if people don't have the question order in front of them, 5 is Jean Glasgow, 6 is Barbara Taylor, 7 Jerry Rose, and 8 is Michael Page, and 9 is Helen Bradbury. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. At last week's assembly, we heard that the Smart Cambridge project, commissioned by the City Deal now has data, as Dr. Lewis said, to support intelligent planning for the transport infrastructure. And though the audio was very poor, he also said, we will know whether building a bus lane down Milton Road actually improves the journeys of the bus on the road or not. This gives context to the question I put to the Assembly that day. You may be aware that at a packed public meeting on Monday, July 4th, at the University Church of Great St Mary's, over 200 people from Cambridge and local villages voted overwhelmingly to support the following motion. We have no confidence in the City Bill's bus lane proposals and consider the consultations to be flawed and lacking in transparency, and the decision-making processes to be non-evidential. We call upon the City Bill to consider instead better, smarter ideas, such as those already suggested by experts and residents. These other ideas could include relatively uncontroversial schemes of clear and demonstrable benefit, such as investment in rail, regional travel hubs, smart traffic signals, and greater investment in smart Cambridge projects to collect high-quality data and provide personalised travel information. The Assembly was not able to give a response, though two members who had attended the meeting did comment on the importance of taking note of this strong expression of public feeling. So today I ask you, and this is given context by the recently announced consultation on addressing congestion, what is the board's response to the call from the Greater Cambridge community for spending the money not on bus lanes, but on some of these other ideas which the whole community could support? Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So I'm going to ask Greg Hughes to respond initially, and then board members may want to add some comments.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think it's a good question, and I think it's one that we've seen in a number of forms, a number of times in these groups. We do listen to very much. I think the first thing I'd say is that I've certainly said consistently to the board that we need a balanced package of measures. So I have said that does need to include bus lanes in our view, because that will provide much greater reliability and improve journey times on certain corridors. But it does also need to include a variety of other measures. And so looking at your list, I think probably without or almost without exception, we can say that we are looking at all of those elements. So taking, for example, smart mobility and information, there's a paper actually on the agenda later on today, item 9, where Noel Godfrey will be bringing proposals, and she presented with Dr. Evans at the Assembly on those issues. So there's a lot of activity there. In terms of rail, whilst the City deal isn't actually directly investing in improved rail, there are two key rail schemes that the board is supporting. So that's the Carpen Rail Station and North Station. In terms of some of the broader issues that we've talked about, such as smarter traffic signals, again, I've been very clear that that's a given in any package that we do, but it's not in itself the solution. So I think, I would say that absolutely we need to embrace a balance, and I think that's what we are recommending to the board. But there are certain things that are coming forward at a particular pace, and that is bus lanes and some of the city centre measures. It's also they are very prominent in people's minds, but there are a range of other things that are happening and definitely will need to happen in this 15-year programme as it moves forward.
I wasn't able or asked to come to the meeting, but obviously there's been a good film of it, and I've studied it, and there's been a number of issues that I think we can learn from. But the overall position that we're at is that I think, as Mr. Hughes said, in the paragraph detailing things that we could be doing, we're either doing it or helping the delivery of that. Councillor Bates put a lot of effort into securing the Adbrook station. The purpose of bus lanes is particularly to give priority at junctions, and clearly, whether it's a consideration of busways or longer bus lanes, they really have to evidence benefit. There is room for a further discussion. I talked to Tanya this lunchtime about, that wasn't in the context of this question, I think it was in a broader context of, well, what should we be doing in relation to buses, and how could the city deal itself, perhaps in September, have a meeting and a discussion including community representatives, and we just look at how buses in a broader sense will work within the city deal's plans. But I think I've said this to Edward Lee as well. I'm not sure I'm going to agree that bus lanes are bad.
Thanks, Lewis. What about paragraph 1?
On the data.
I'm working closely with Dr. Lewis on this. What his system does is it tracks buses, so he can tell you here and now how long it's taking for buses to go down Easton Road, for example. And at the moment, it's at the level that it can produce graphs showing how long it takes at different times of the day. And the one I've seen is the one for Hills Road, and was between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, buses were differing in their transit times down Hills Road by a factor of 3. So it was 3 times longer at some times than others. And what he's particularly interested to do is, if you're stood at a bus stop in Easton Road and you want to know when the next bus is coming accurately, then this system will, when it's fully developed, be able to predict when the bus will come with complete accuracy. So if it says it'll be there in 2 minutes, in 2 minutes it will appear. So that is what the system is doing, and as it gathers more and more information, then obviously our knowledge on how long things are taking will improve. Though, to be honest, he's not there yet. We're currently at the level of how long is it taking at the moment. And he needs to build from that into an app that you could have on your phone to use the data that he's collecting.
I think other councillors wanted to add a few points, hopefully helpfully made.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. If I just add a few little bits and pieces about Rome in particular, and also my experience on Monday. So I'll start with my experience on Monday, where we were launching the consultation. I went to the long-standing Park and Ride with my colleague, Noel Kavanagh, who is the cycling champion for Cambridge County Council, and he was on his bike, and there was a car. And the three of us set off at the same time on the...
Councillor Bates, can you please bring your microphone in, because I'm not picking up anything here.
So
Thank
I
you.
hope you can hear me better. So we all started off at the same time on the Park and Ride. I got on the guided bus, Noel got on his bike, and somebody got in the car. It was quite interesting to see who got there first in Guildhall. The first person there was Noel Kavanagh on his bike. And I actually asked him about how he actually got there, which cycle routes he used. And he explained that he had a guided bus and he came through Girton because the Huntingdon Road is much improved to what it was, and he was there first. I came on the guided bus, came past Orchard Park, turning left into Histon Road, where I sat in the bus, along with everybody else in the car. And therefore I didn't win, much to my annoyance, I have to say, and I expressed my annoyance to Noel at the time. I anticipated the bus to win, and it didn't, because Noel was a cyclist. Let me give you that as an experience that I experienced on Monday. If I just turn to red, we are going to deliver it built at the moment, Cambridge North Station. We are currently looking at Cambridge South Station. We're also looking at East West Rail, particularly the central section between Bedford and Cambridge. That has shown a lot of interest, particularly from places like Milton Keynes and Oxford as well, to complete the link. So I think, in answer to your question about rail, we certainly are developing those projects with Network Rail. They're not easy to deliver, they are time consuming to deliver, and they do take a long while. But reassured, we are on that case, and we will improve the rail links for lots of people, particularly from east to west, because traditionally everything goes from north to south. There was a debate yesterday in Westminster Hall, and people were on ITV last night. You could see some of the comments which were made in that local news. So I think in answer to your question with respect to rail, we are on the case and we're determined to actually deliver that in time. But it is not easy, and of course it's dependent on finance as well.
Thanks, Councillor Burkett.
Mrs. Dyson, I'm pleased by your question because it gives me a chance to add that I think we're doing all the things you want us to do. And if I look at your 4 points, investment in rail, Councillor Bates has covered that. We're very keen on, for example, the Cambridge South railway station. I've certainly got a record of that, and I think Councillor Bates as well. Foxton level crossing as well would be another one. I think it's quite rail, and it's all connected with rail. There's lots of rail ideas. Your second one is regional travel hubs. There's no reason you should know, but earlier this week I wrote to the chairs and clerks of all the parish councils in the district, asking them, could they come up with ideas in their locality for regional travel hubs. One of the issues is actually finding, it's all very well in theory, but finding the land, the plot on the ground. So we're asking people for creative ideas. We've already had about 6 emails with some ideas there. I asked everybody to come back by the end of September, and I said that will be in the public domain. Smart traffic signals, I had previously said I didn't know exactly what we mean by smart traffic signals, but for example, that every single traffic light, broadly speaking, in Cambridge should switch to green when bus is approaching it. I've said that frequently. We're going to touch on it on agenda item 8, I think. So we are absolutely, I'm certainly absolutely with you there. And then, as Professor Sater said, there is a lot of investment in smart city games projects to collect high quality data. Again, we're going to hear that on agenda item 8. And then we are going to talk about providing personal travel information on the back of it. So I think we are doing exactly what you want, and I'm pleased with the opportunity to be able to tell you that.
Well, and I'll just add that there's, within the framework of the consultation that is underway, we will be developing an event to talk about buses and bus priority, and I'm sure that will be a lively discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Miss. Because it is part of the transport system, these bus lanes, isn't it? I'm not supposed to apply on it, but it is part of the system.
Well,
So the bus lanes can travel across the city.
There is a strategy which includes giving buses greater priority and reliability.
Yeah. Okay. It's just that people need to know that.
Okay, thank you for the question. But we're in the discussion and the debate that is not.
Okay. No, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, fair.
Jean couldn't be here for my reading.
Yes, you want to ask the question?
Hello, I'm Lynn Hyde, pretending to be Jean Glasper. She sends her apologies, she couldn't come for last minute. On Thursday, 2nd of June, I asked a question at the City Deal Assembly about the fact that the Urban Design Guide for Transport Infrastructure recognised that a key objective should be to achieve an appropriate blend of the need for movement along major routes and the desire to make them attractive places to work, live and pass through. I asked whether the City Deal would be conducting a skills analysis to ensure that the teams who will deliver the programme have the full range of competencies necessary to deliver good placemaking and sustainable development, as well as functional transport infrastructure, and I was assured this was already in place. Consultation is currently underway on the improvements to Trumpington Road, cycleway, and there seems little awareness of design issues in this environmentally sensitive conservation area. I should add that Jean is aware that that scheme is not strictly a city deal scheme, but talking with officers there,
Well, it's not a city.
yes, but they made reference to the deal scheme, and the thing is that the point is still the same one that applied to Hills Road and that might apply to Milton and Trumpington Road, to Houston Road. The lead officers are listed as a traffic engineer and 2 cycling officers. Where is the input from architects, landscape and urban designers?
I think Councillor Bates is going to answer it, but I think it has to be said that the Trumpington Road is not a city deal scheme, but obviously there are principles that we're happy to discuss.
As you'll be aware, those are a county council project. I'm fully aware of the project myself, because the county council lead member in that area. I'm very content to take that away. I'm very content to meet you and other people with the team. We do take into account all the issues that you've raised in respect to the landscape, and we'll be happy to meet you on behalf of you, or whatever you think is appropriate. I'm happy to meet with you and please arrange a meeting. I'm sure we could assist you in that area.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lynn. Question 6 is from Barbara Taylor.
I refer to the recently launched public consultation document on tackling peak time congestion in Cambridge and ask exactly where in the leaflet and the questionnaire does it mention that bus lanes are being proposed?
Thanks, Barbara. Could I ask Graham Hughes to answer, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So the overall city deal, so to speak, it's all part of the package which, as you say, bus lanes are part of that, and they're being dealt with through the radial road consultations, so the Milton Road, Hudson Road, A48. In terms of specifically the leaflet you're referring to, which is the most recent one on the city centre proposals, bus lanes aren't specifically mentioned on there because bus lanes aren't in that package of measures that we're talking about. So we're talking about an 8-point plan, a series of measures, and that's specifically what we consult on. So bus lanes are part of the overall package, but they're not part of that consultation, that engagement exercise. So I think the point you make, though, is actually a very fair point. It's come across in a number of the other questions, which is about communicating the overall city deal vision. And so I think that is something that we do need to reflect on. So if we have then individual consultations on parts of that vision, it is also clear and known what the vision as a whole actually is about. But as I say, in terms of the specific leaflet, that's why they're mentioned. But I think again that is something we can take away and reflect on how we communicate the overall picture of the city deal.
Can I say something else? In the general question of information, you do refer to Histon Road and Milton Road in there, but again, you don't specifically mention buses, and I think it's very important that the residents do understand exactly what you're proposing.
Well, as you'll see, there's a set of exhibitions and events that are listed in the leaflet, and clearly that's going to be a discussion between the transport officers and us when we're at those events, which will take account of the whole picture. So certainly as part of the exhibition, I understood that we actually have got some diagrams which show the radial routes and the wider picture. So whilst it isn't specifically, sorry, this isn't a discussion, but we'll obviously have the opportunity, Barbara, to have that as part of the discussion that people have when they come in and talk to council officers and look at the exhibition material. The exhibition material will expand on what's in the booklet, but it's right that we consult on specifics whilst aiming to join them up together.
Just a quick question, it's just this leaflet, is it going to be delivered to all the houses? Because I haven't seen it actually, I've just seen it online, and as we realise, a lot of people don't have computers and access to that. So I just wonder, where can we pick up?
Well, for the benefit of that, it is a useful question and an important question. We're not delivering it door to door, but it will be available from all libraries and from other information points. When's the publication date?
It's already out.
It's out now, so the supplies will be out with libraries and other locations, and we'll be publicising the list of where those locations are. So there are a couple of exhibitions, and then at this point, but the main period of consultation is actually in September.
Just a quick, it's just the
Sorry,
advertising.
I'm not going to follow this pattern. I'm sorry, but I'm very happy to answer any questions afterwards. We've had three supplementaries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And the next is question 7 from Jerry Rose. Thank you, Jerry.
Hi. Well, my question is about the data that were collected together from the first wave of consultations, which concluded in February, and how those data have been utilised in shaping up the current proposals, and the way in which we as members of the public, residents, can in fact check on the process which the City Deal officials and board have gone through in coming to the set of proposals that we currently have for consideration. Now, I raised these questions to the City Deal Board on June the 9th, the last board meeting, about the published data files from Milton Road and the Histon Road consultations. These were submissions from individuals, residents associations and other groups provided on the City Deal website. There were 19 files comprising nearly 1,400 pages, emails, letters, social media, but they were in a PDF image format that is non-searchable. This is in contrast to virtually any other PDFs that I've downloaded from the web, including, for example, the minutes for today, where you can search through the text and you will be able to find where particular topics are mentioned. This is not true for the 19 files that I am highlighting. So, at the last board meeting, broad reassurances were given by City Deal officials about the use of these data in shaping up the current proposals. But I, along with other residents, as I know from recent meetings, are still unconvinced that the use of the submissions that have been made has been systematic and that it represents a true picture of expressed public opinion. At that meeting on June the 9th, the officers promised that I would receive a written answer regarding the file format, and I was expecting to hear, but I've heard nothing yet. It's nearly 5 weeks. I was hoping that by now text searchable versions of the files would be published. My question today therefore asks what progress has been made on this issue and why it's taking so long to resolve, and could officers at least publish on the website their own in-house summaries of the submissions so that residents can understand how the data have been utilised in coming to this current set of proposals.
Thanks, Mr. Rose. Yeah, I have to apologise if this has taken us longer than we expected, and I'll just ask for some supplementary comments to be added.
Okay. So again, apologies that this has taken longer than I think we would have hoped it might. Unfortunately, there were various IT issues that have led to a delay. You'll certainly get a response within a week to update you on progress and to make sure you know what's going on. I would say that consultation reports with summaries and responses are published and were published at the time on the website, and also the officers' reports will tend to include summaries of the consultation responses as well.
So does that mean we have everything that was produced as a summary of the responses in the agenda papers that so far have been circulated? Surely there'll be more detailed stuff produced.
The agenda papers set out the officer's report and the recommendation. Published at the same time will be the raw data, so all responses where your request is, can we have searchable files please, and the answer is being looked at, being worked on, IT issues. But also, when there's been a consultation, there will be a consultation report, and that will include that summary of the responses and what's coming out of that consultation.
So on the question of there being searchable files, the answer is yes. Yeah. So we'll get, I'm sorry it's taken a while, Mr. Rose. I think having had the data put into a certain format, it's proved more complicated to unravel that, and the commitment is that the data should be searchable in the future. So we will get a reply to you within a week, and if you're not happy with that, please ring me up. Okay.
Thank you.
Question 8 from Michael Page. which is in part being referenced by Graham at the beginning. But if you ask a question, then obviously we can respond on the other issues as well, Mr. Page.
Yes, thank you. Graham Watts mentioned that I discovered that this question on the last occasion sort of gone AWOL from the minutes, and I think the response has gone AWOL. So I'm going to ask a very similar question, and I'd appreciate if I could get a full reply on the record, please. The original consultation revealed a majority in favour of retaining the Milton Road Elizabeth Way roundabout in some form. In addition to the questionnaire, there were numerous written submissions on this subject, some offering suggestions for redesign to improve safety. But I can't find any evidence that this majority opinion has really been taken seriously by the board or its officers, and no detailed response in any city deal documents. In the meantime, the County Council has published a Dutch-style redesign of the Queen Elizabeth Way Fendon Road roundabout to improve safety. Why did City Deal not give us any detailed evidence or rationale in favour of replacing the roundabout with traffic lights? And why were consultants or Cambridgeshire Highways not commissioned to design a signal-controlled or Dutch-style roundabout as an alternative option, as the Council has seen fit to do for the Queen Edith Way Fendon Road junction?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Graham Hughes to answer on that specific, but I also want to add some comments about how the local liaison forums are intended to work and some improvements to those.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the first specific point about single versus roundabout, I mean, there is a general principle, and I'm not saying this is always applied, but there is a general principle that in terms of, for example, cycle safety, traffic signals are much better than roundabouts. So in that particular instance, Elizabeth Way, I must acknowledge, as you point out, the resident comments. There was a judgment by the officers at the time, when that was brought back to the board, that to balance bus priority and cycle safety, then the signals would be a better option. But I think, as with all of these schemes, and I'm sure Councillor will want to add to that, as he said, with all of these schemes, there is a process of development that needs to be gone through. We can't always satisfy every objective from every single person whose judgments have to be made. But obviously we do need to check in and make sure that, on one hand, schemes are meeting their objectives, but on the other hand, also meeting the needs of local people. So that was the judgment that was made at the time. You asked a specific question why, and that is the answer. But that's not to say that as these schemes develop, any particular elements can't be, if you like, considered or re-evaluated just to make sure that the right judgments have been made along the way.
I think in terms of, I mean, I represent a ward which has a Dutch-style roundabout, but it's on a road with the number 2 bus only, so it's got 1 10-minute service each way. So in terms of just my knowledge of the different options, then certainly one of the issues in terms of the design is the choice of junction or roundabout appropriate to the nature of the traffic. So, but what I suggest is if you contact Stuart Ormsby or one of the Graham's team, then at least there can be more of a discussion about some of those options in terms of that design. In terms of the Histon Road and Norton Road local liaison forums, we've been reflecting on how to operate a dialogue with residents so that residents genuinely do have a say. Clearly there's been some establishment of both of those forums in that the chair has been appointed, but there are several issues that we as a board want to see occur as part of that. There will be elements in the design of both Histon and Milton Road where we will expect the officers to follow the decision that we took at the last board meeting. So in terms of elements, the preferred element for Highworth and Elizabeth Way is a junction because of the issues of the quantity of bus traffic that comes through. But we want there to be the opportunity through a better format of workshops so that residents feel that they've got a say. It's not a free run because we've got to develop proposals for a scheme broadly in line with the decisions that the board took it and the Assembly also supported in their last meetings. But what we're looking to do is to have workshops which look at each section of the road So there will be a workshop which includes looking at this specific issue of Highworth and Elizabeth Way, but also look at the beginning of Hurst Park Avenue and how that junction works with Milton Road. But to have 3 workshops will be with more time to design those. So in terms of the timing of those workshops, they're originally proposed for next week, but we want to spend more time getting that right and actually giving yourself and others an opportunity to have a real say in some of the choices that there are. So there's that, and then also within that we're committed to just make the issues of landscape, of urban realm, of trees more integral in the consideration of those issues. So the local liaison forum is a body that will recommend and it can make proposals, and the chair of those local liaison forums will come to this meeting and make those recommendations. So we do want to strengthen that opportunity. This is a long answer, but I hope that it just evidences, Mr. Cleves, that we want to actually have a discussion about those options, and residents will have a say.
Thank you, I do appreciate that. I just want to point out that I think today I've had a more full answer than I've received since January. I think what I have also found frustrating is the lack of any documented rationale behind certain choices. At the very beginning, we were offered no roundabout or no roundabout, but there's no rationale or narrative behind it. And also what we need is some real upfront discussion with officers about the pluses and minuses and understanding it. And that's what we've been missing. So if we could get that, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Burke wants to add something. Maybe Graham Hughes could add something.
I mean, while Chairman, we're on the subject of deputy liaison forums, I've been to the 2 that happened here, 428. And my observation there, which I think probably also applies to the Milton Road and the Histon Road one, is I think they would benefit from more senior transport officer attendance. At the 8428 one, there were, it was very nice to see a couple of officers there, but Graham, you were unable to be there, Bob Means was unable to be there, and Stuart Walmsley was unable to be there. And I don't know if the 3 of you were at the Milton and Histon Road one. But I think it would be very helpful for residents, and certainly me as a board member, if you could commit that on the local liaison forums in future, at least one of the 3 of you is present at every single one. I appreciate that's going to cut into your evenings, but the evenings are when the residents are involved in these things, and I think they would be much more productive if some senior transport officers, or a senior transport officer, could be present at every single one.
So, Graham, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly in terms of what Councillor Burnett said, we can certainly aim to do that, and there are times when it's not possible. We have to, the people who are available into those forums, so we can certainly seek to do that. I think in relation to specific points you've made, and I think it's worth saying that there is behind all of these reports a huge amount of work that goes on, but it's also very helpful to hear that if that isn't, if you like, doing it well enough for the residents who actually need to understand that, we need to change the way we report things and capture things. So I think that feedback is very helpful. I can assure you, because with all of the recommendations, or behind all of those recommendations, there is a lot of technical work. But if we're not putting it forward in a way that residents find useful, then we can certainly go. So again, your comments there are very, very helpful.
So if, for instance, and I don't think a final decision has been made on the shape, but if Histon Road and Milton Road are each taken in 3 sections and there's workshops on a particular section, I think that's a far better opportunity to have a dialogue about the choices about a junction or a section of the road than is possible within this kind of format. So I think that when you've got a workshop with a group of people talking, then that is the opportunity to actually then ask a few questions and obviously get to the bottom of, well, why is that design the proposed one? Okay, if you want to say one more thing, then I'll ask Councillor Bates to
Thank you. I think it would be helpful if that message that you just given could be transmitted. If a senior officer can't be there, then whatever officer is there, because the feedback I've had at the moment is that, and this is from an officer, well, we're going to, at LLFs, we will consult on the detail, where trees go, where verges go and so on, but you know, that junction is fixed. Now, if I come along and just start asking questions about the rationale behind a roundabout versus a junction, that officer is going to say, sorry, no, that's not my remit, you can't do that. Do I need a separate meeting with somebody else for that?
Well, I'm not trying to pretend that suddenly there's lots of open choices, but I think where there is a preferred proposal, then that has to really be explained in detail. And clearly on that Highworth and Elizabeth Way choice, then it has to be evidenced why for the cycling, why for the buses, why for the local pedestrians is that the best choice, as well as for the continuing use of cars and other vehicles, but with particular priority to the other modes. I'm just going to ask, do you want to say something, Ian? I'll leave the last word to Graham Hughes, if that's all right, Mr. Treasurer.
Chairman, I think that, as Councillor Ellis said, I think if we can move forward in that way, I think that hopefully to residents and other groups will be very helpful. But also, as you said, it's not to sort of say that it's completely open now, nothing is decided. It's clearly the board has made certain decisions, but I think probably the important thing I'd add to that is that we are still feeling our way through this process as we need to work with all of the groups to get the process right. So the reason I say that is that when we, in the past, have taken over the ESF reforms, they've always been at a very, very much later stage of the project. So, for example, the first scheme we did look at the ESF reforms was the busway scheme. And that was a scheme where everything was tied down to the Transport Works Act rules. So we were commencing those reforms and we were going to people and we were saying, this is what we're going to get. What we're happy to talk to you about is what we can talk to you about, just the finer details of how that scheme is now delivered. And those local liaison reforms actually work really, really well because they've already been a process through the Transport Works Act order. So what has been decided here is to do those forms at a much earlier stage. And I think, as the Chairman said, what we need to get right then is the balance between the board giving a clear steer on, if you like, the shape of the schemes and then working with the communities on, if you like, the details. And I think, to be fair to the officers that have been there, what they've actually done is they've sort of taken the decision from the board, the way that we've always operated these local liaison calls, and sort of taken that as a, well, that's what we're going to do, and now we can only talk to you about certain things. So I think, what the Chairman is committing to, and certain officers will commit to, is to make that a much more open dialogue through a series of workshops, so that the elements that are created, the purpose of these, whether it's 2 or 3 stage workshops, would then be to say to the community, now we need to explain to you the rationale, exactly the points you raised about why particular recommendations have been made to the board. And I think we can probably be very clear to you through that process on the things that are open for discussion and change, if necessary, and things that are probably much more fixed. And there will be some things that are fixed, because as we develop the schemes, there are some things, if you took them away, the whole sort of integrity of the scheme and the purpose it falls away. And we need to be honest with you about those elements, but we also need to be honest with you about the things where we say, actually, yes, this could go a number of different ways. It's work with you in a way that works best. And I think probably the best example of that would be the landscape and the urban design. I think we need to do a lot more work with communities about what that looks like. I think we're absolutely committed to making sure that these routes are much better in terms of the quality of the landscape and the maybe we would have considered in the past. But I don't think we've got that message across. I don't think residents actually see that's the case. So we need to work a lot harder with you as groups to say, okay, so what should it look like? What do you want it to look like? What can we do? And have that much more open dialogue. So I hope that what the Chairman suggested, we can be clear with you and develop the schemes positively as we go forward.
So before the workshops for both Milton Road and Histon Road will lay out the rules in terms of the sort of shape of what we plan to do. And colloquial language will say what's up for grabs and what we think there's a real opportunity for residents and councillors to contribute to. And I'm happy to meet with representatives of the different residents' associations on Milton Road and Histon Road at that time.
Councillor Difford. Thank you, Chair. I found that really useful to have the interaction there, and it's not something that you can do at the Assembly, because this is a different animal. The Assembly has lots more people involved. I do think it's really important sometimes to have that interaction, and it's where we have it, and maybe the local liaison forums is a place where we can actually expand and have more interaction like that.
Well, we're learning, and it's about the format of the workshops in particular, I think, so that gives the opportunity for people to have a proper discussion. And I hope that at least gives a bit of background to question 9, but it's question 9 from Helen Bradbury.
I'm not sure how my question now fits in with your last answer, but never mind, I'll ask it anyway. Okay, I'm Helen Bradbury, Chair of the Local Liaison Forum for the A428 and Western Water schemes. So this is a follow-up to my question to the Assembly last week. So thank you for agreeing that Assembly and board members would automatically receive our minutes, and thank you for clarifying that the LLF Chair will be invited to speak at relevant Assembly and board meetings. I think these are big steps towards greater transparency and will give the public confidence. We still have 2 areas of concern though, which is why I'm back. So how the local liaison forum feeds into the decision-making process, especially via the project board, is a transparency issue. And the timing of our meetings and how new information required for them is shared by officers with us. So just generally, we do welcome the establishment of the LLS by the board. We accept their only advisory, but we seize the opportunity they give us and want to make them work. Then at our first meeting on the 14th of June, we had 23 elected representatives attend. It was a packed community hall. 10 key issues were debated, resolutions adopted almost unanimously in every case. And it was a powerful representation of public opinion and collective resolve. It took a while to settle down the meeting, but we did good business, I think, in the end. But what happens to these resolutions now and who decides? This is our question. So we note that our minutes form an agenda item for another layer of meetings, namely the project board, for which there appears no reporting or communication structure in our terms of reference. More specifically, given 7 out of our 10 resolutions were passed contrary to the officers' stated view, there remains a concern that they'll simply be dismissed by the officers at the project board meeting. We therefore recommend that the chair of the LLF attend at least the first project board meeting to report views of the LLF and observe how proposals and suggestions will be taken forward. And at the very least, we need some kind of report, we think, direct to the LLF, to which we can potentially respond if need be. So my first question is, do you support this recommendation? Secondly, timing. The first LLF meeting took place after key debates on the 2 schemes had taken place in the Assembly and new work commissioned. There's no point the LLF debating schemes A, B and C if the officers are developing hybrids D and E, but we do not know what they are. We are one step behind and it does not yet feel transparent. The LLF can only really be effective, we think, if it can feed into the decision-making process, not simply react to it. So my second question is, will you instruct officers to work with the LLF to ensure meetings are optimally timed and certainly not after key debates, and that all new information is proactively shared so that our views can contribute to these debates? And this leads to my final question. Following confirmation in last week's meeting, I would now expect to be invited to speak at the next Assembly and board meetings. But we therefore request access to the preferred option material as soon as possible, ideally by the 15th of August, to give us time to canvass the views of what are a lot of members individually, and given there's no scheduled meeting, and prepare a representative response.
Thank you. I'll start with Graham views, including on some timing issues there, but then obviously we can keep us a couple of questions of us.
Thank you. Right, so there's quite a lot in there. I think we've sort of touched on your question in the previous debate, which hopefully you found as well in terms of the broad purpose of the local liaison forums. I mean, without repeating myself, that they are happening at an earlier stage, so we are still feeling our way through how they most effectively operate. I think the key thing to say is that the board here is the decision-making body. And clearly there are a series of other processes that go on, if you like, in terms of QO, but actually everything that is up for decision is reported to the Assembly first of all, and then through the board. And so in terms of, and I think this is an established principle really, in terms of the chairs of those local liaison forums reporting into this board, that's entirely appropriate. It's a way of you expressing things on the agenda, views that have been discussed. In terms of the ongoing discussions, clearly they would be available to the project board. The project board essentially are officer groups developing proposals. They're not decision making, and the output from those is reported through the Assembly board. So I don't think that selectively having people externally attending those groups is actually either the best use of your time or actually anything that will achieve what you want to achieve. I think the right person in the right place is to make sure that the local liaison forum has a full discussion. Those discussions are fully, if you like, seen by the officers, and there's a range of officers across the council who councils who are developing the scheme. But then more importantly, that information is available to them, and then the chairs are here at the board explaining how views have been come to. So that I would suggest is the best way forward. You made a point about timing in terms of sort of sequencing and so on, and I think again we need to get that right in the sense that local liaison forums, so we need to work with groups. Local liaison forums are an essential part of this overall process. The board here is taking the view to create them much more early than we normally would, and the reason is that we can get local member and community engagement in the early stages of the scheme. So we just talked about how we can get those to operate better, and I don't think the principles we talked about would apply just to the road and this road, the ones that we need to develop more of the forums. So what we then need to do is make sure that those forums, all the information does actually tie together. So there is a job of programming needs to be done in terms of the full decisions and the inputs, but we can certainly work with all the groups and make sure that does tie together properly.
And the 8 to 8 timing, that's good as well.
So can you...
So I mean, in terms of the timing, and we're grateful for the leadership and the progress that you've made, and so we want to synchronise it with the timing of the coming forward with any options on the 8 to 8, which none of the board has any knowledge of either.
Chairman, I think yes is the answer in the sense that there is still a lot of work to be done on 48. But yes, we do.
So I don't think we're going to be in a position to meet this timetable because the board itself hasn't had the opportunity to have a look at what might be the preferred officer option. So that will need to come forward, but we're not in a position to meet, I don't think, an August timetable.
No, I don't think so.
But when will the information start to seep through? Because if I come to speak at the 25th and the 1st, I need to, I can't speak as a lone voice. I need to have canvassed the views of my members, sounds like a treaty, to make sure that what I say to you is representative of the local liaison's view on whatever these proposals are. So it's a sort of catch-22, but we need to have, I need to have some information in order to get a response to it.
So similarly, we need to work out in terms of the proposals that I don't know about that are coming forward as a preferred option, what the time scale is. So we'll let you know as soon as we know, because it's critical that the work that you do links to the timetable.
And I think the idea of workshops is a good one, because mini subgroups between the big meetings, because actually we would want to. So I think the material is published on the 17th of August, isn't it? Or starts to be. I've seen that date. Then we would want to have a mini meeting between then and the 25th, so we could prepare a response. So it's about sharing information and knowing when it's coming, as much as anything else.
Sorry, I agree with that. And once again, we're trying to be open to all these things, as though we are still feeling our way through, but absolutely agree with that. And we need to make sure that if we look at the sequence of decisions and other events, there is information as much as it possibly can be, is available at the right time to the right rules.
And we'll publish a an updated framework that supports the work of making the local liaison forums, including the workshops, more productive and effective. Francis?
2 points. Mr. Hughes, did I hear you say that you're pushing back the A4 to 8 timetable?
There's still, we've done some initial work. We actually still need to do quite a bit more, actually. So I did say that, and I think that is probably the case that we're going to be saying that. We just actually need to say there's a lot more work to be done.
Can't work out that's a yes and no or possibly.
Sorry? It's a revised timetable, I think.
That's correct.
So the answer to my question is yes.
As I said, there is a lot of work that's been done. There's actually a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm not aware that we have formally, unless it has happened already and tangled done, I'm not aware that we have formally changed the timetable. What I'm saying to you is there's a lot more work to be done, and I think that is probably right.
And my second question is, could you just, I think, members of the public find it really useful if you explain what a project board is, because I think use of the word project board gives the impression in lots of people's minds that perhaps something like this is open to the public or a minute, that's published agendas on the website. I don't really know what a project board is, I confess, but I get much more impression that it's an internal meeting of officers, sort of in a meeting at 2:30 on a Thursday for a cup of coffee up on a room 6.2 in the Shire Hall to talk about the project, and that the members of the public aren't there to attend, there aren't minutes, it's not published. What actually is a project board?
So we obviously use the term in a number of different ways, actually, in different projects in the county council. In the context of city guild schemes, the project board is close to what we described, which is an officer-only group. It's basically the internal range of officers who are working on the project and doing the option appraisals and so on and so forth. And so it's not a public group. It's not a group of members attend. It is basically the internal workings within the council that actually develops the schemes, and then the output from that will appear in various places such as this assembly and the LLS.
And one of the key purposes of these internal project boards, as you know, the city deal is a partnership, so it's to make sure that officers from across the 5 partner organisations with a range of skills that were referred to earlier, or a range of skills needed to deliver a project are brought together. It's a communications forum, and it's something to make sure that you've got the team there and mobilised to deliver and to understand the stakeholders. And so the outcomes and resolutions from LLS will need to inform their thinking.
Councillor Hickford wants to comment as well.
Thank you again, Chair, for letting me come in on this. I know I'm not part of the board, but when something comes up and it affects the assembly, I would like to make a comment if possible. I think Helen Bradley's got a really good point with regards to timing, and we've put the assembly and the board closer together so that decision making can be smoother. But if we're going to introduce these LOFs, we need to make sure there's enough time. And a week, I don't think is enough time for residents to get together and to present something to the board, and to the assembly. And what that will mean is we'll just bypass the assembly and come straight to the board. I really don't want that to happen. So I'd just like some sort of structure in place going forward as to how we can actually do the LOFs.
This has been an interesting session. The reason why the dates will not work is that the preferred option on the A4 to 8 will not be ready, so there will still be plenty of time, because it isn't going to come to that round of meetings in terms of the assembly of the board. So there's no way that we're going to proceed without the local liaison forum having signed it up before it comes. Okay? Sorry, it took a long time. One last point from Councillor Bates, but I think before I say that, as we've had some of what has come through in terms of how we want to improve the local liaison forum has been prompted by discussions about how to get Liston Road and Milton Road onto a better discussion. And obviously we would want you, along with the chairs of the other 2 local liaison forums who had an input into some of this, that we would want to obviously have you involved in just checking that the process can help you as well. and for you to have a say. One last comment from Councillor Bates, and I think we're going to move on to the rest of the
Let's
agenda.
be quick. Let me start with be very quick. I have read the minutes.
Oh, good.
Okay, let's start well. You might like to hear that, but I have read them. Two, I think actually there are other local forums. For instance, the one I attended the first meeting, which is the Abbey Road, Abbey Bridge and Prison Trail. I attended the first meeting of that. They had their second meeting last night, and I have already had some feedback from one of the elected members about how that went. So I asked the question, how did it go? So there are other liaison forms, obviously yourselves and others. My suggestion actually, Mr. Chairman, is that we ask the officers to go away, please, and work out that detailed timetable, because it needs to all fit in now with board meetings, assembly meetings, local liaison forums, etc. So what I would like to see come forward is with all the local liaison forums, we'll put the list of anticipated, because there will be slippages or decisions which need to be made or can't be made for whatever reason. But I think it would be useful to lay that, all ourselves to lay all that out, particularly I think with the help of Graham, who takes them, because it needs to fit in very much into the whole programme. So I would suggest that that might be an action that we should consider.
Yeah, we need to provide, we need to share with you, Helen, and with the chairs of the other two forums, that clear process.
Well, I think we can really help because we want it to be successful. It's our way of feeding into what you're doing, and we want to do that. So, and we have now had experience of what's frustrating about it and what is good about it. One thing, just like minutes, when I will sit down, I think they should have been much more comprehensive than they were. It was really just a record of the resolutions. But actually, there were so many very interesting points came up that actually I hadn't thought of or heard the public voice before. And it would have been really useful to have them all noted down. So let's make the minutes comprehensive.
Well, it may be that there's a formal minute and some attachment to the other points that's raised. Thank you. I'm still looking around for Mel Schofield, but...
I didn't get a follow-up and they all did.
I'm sorry, Antony, but I did offer to meet and it's great event. But I think the reason is that we have given some serious thought over the last week on the local liaison forums, and we need to just, we needed to say something this afternoon, albeit that it came in several lights, Antony. But they do perform, and they are a critical part of looking at the detail of the schemes right from the start. It just happens that these are the first schemes to come forward. There will, in the future, be other projects which the principals would apply to. So thank you to all of the questions, and we will be sharing a clearest set of proposals on local liaison forums.
Services on behalf of both the chairman of the Assembly and the chairman of the board.
And we'll do that, and also thank Daryl in particular for the contribution on skills. Graham Watts.
Thanks, Chairman. I've also got a nominee from the University of Cambridge for a new substitute for Professor Slater, Dr. Jason Matthews, as the Director of the University's Estate Strategy, who's been nominated to be the substitute.
So,
how do we mean the same thing? It should be alternate member. In other words, he would come and become was removed by us.
yeah, we won't substitute. We can approve that as well, okay? Thank you. Right, sorry Roger, we've kind of taken a while, but we're here now. And so, is there anything you want to say on item 7 before we take input onto each of the items?
Items, no, it's fine, thank you, Chairman. The draft minutes are in the public domain and are available and context for whatever.
Thank you. So we've got the Chair of the Assembly to contribute as part of the introduction to each of the items, and obviously share the discussion and the analysis that he did on a number of these in some detail, and obviously comes again back to Councillor Smith's point on item 11. So on item 8, if I could ask Noel, you can introduce this? And then I could get input from Roger straight after that introduction. So if I can introduce Noel Gordon, who leads, Greg, sorry, I'm out of date, sorry. Noel, go. Sorry, I've just been so absorbed in the detail of the local liaison forms, I think I should be cutting it off. So sorry, Noel. Your opportunity. Sorry, life's been a bit of a crossroads today.
Much closer, Noel, please.
Sorry.
Right, can everybody hear you?
Thank you.
Okay. So this report is just a report back on progress on the Smart City Management Platform workstream, which forms part of the Smart Cambridge programme. And you all might recall that in November the kind of outline approval was given for this workstream, and then in March we brought back a more detailed proposal which was given approval to proceed. And what I'm doing today is I'm just giving you a bit of a progress update on what we've been doing over the last 3 months. Just to reiterate what this workstream is about, it's really about taking collecting, processing and making available some of the data sets, some new and some existing data sets about transport-related activities in Cambridge to help support the overall objectives of the city deal, really. And I suppose I'm going to add in that in doing so, we're using quite leading-edge technology. It's not using existing traditional established mechanisms to do that. So it is experimental, it is leading edge. You've noticed in the paper that what I've done is given in Appendix A a more detailed project plan. As we've worked through the design of the work package, which is listed as two separate phases. The first one, which is due to complete in March next year, and then the second phase will follow on from that for a further year. As I said, I'll set out in a bit of detail in Appendix A the way that the different tasks dovetail. We have made good progress to date. Most of the initial work has been preparatory in terms of the technology design, the architecture. We've been working very closely with both the Technology Advisory Group, but also with colleagues from the university in devising and getting the architectural work underway. And in Appendix 2, you'll see that we've given you a bit of an overview that's been produced by Dr. Ian Lewis from the university about that architecture and how that's working. In terms of the progress, we've got some of the data sets are already being collated, and there's already been reference, I think, made today to some of the bus information data that's beginning to be collated. Some of the other areas have already been progressed, like the air quality sensors have now been deployed, and we're about to start collating that data. And then that needs to be assembled, if you like, and brought together over the next few months with a view to the purpose of this data. This data will be used in a number of different ways. Some of it will feed directly into an app that's going to be developed and will be available in test early next year. Other aspects of that data will be used for both to support better apps from commercial companies, but also to support the transport planning teams in making the decisions. That's about it on my progress update.
Right, thank you for that. Questions? Councillor Bird.
Sorry.
No, thank you, Archie.
Sorry, I made a gross error. I'm Councillor Hitford to proceed.
I could be Councillor Bird if you want that. Thank you, Chair.
I don't think there's any room for confusion.
The Assembly had overwhelming support for this, and it was important to note that this was the first project stream by us to follow. We did ask the question whether the data could actually be sold in the future, and that's still out for questioning at the moment, so I'm not sure of the answer to that one. We did ask if finances were a constraint, because this is a very important piece of work, and we were assured actually they're not constrained at the moment. It's a lean bit of work that's progressing as it should, so we were pleased with that. One thing that did come out is that we felt, because it's such a key bit of work, that communication with key benefits could be done a little bit better, so that people actually know what's going on and are aware. And so that, when we do come up with results, everyone's aware of where we're going with this and progress as we go. And the other thing is that the Assembly was told that we would have a demonstration of the data sets associated with this piece of work, and we would be given access to a portal in order that we could view the data, which we're all looking forward to in the coming months. So it's a good bit of work and overwhelming support from the Assembly. It was noted that expectations of the first presentation back in February did paint a different picture, which is why it was pointed out this is the first work stream. There's lots more to come on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. And I noticed that 8 different members of the Assembly have made significant contributions. I think that, in terms of the change of form of the project, then clearly we're sort of investigating something that's completely new. So there's obviously some change of direction, I think, simply because it's about how to use sensors, how to use data, and how to sort of make the most of some of the opportunities. So it's quite, to use the phrase, cutting edge. Councillor Burke, and thanks for that, Roger.
Thank you. Serious question, we've allocated £300,000 to this. That's in the middle of page 27. If I go to Chris Mallion's report on page 75, very top line, we haven't spent any of £300,000. Is that just a timing point? And then, as a supplementary to that one, really picking up what Roger in the Assembly said, I think all of us are huge supporters of this programme. Are we giving you enough money? Not asking to waste it, but will you assure us that if you think you need more...
That's a very open question.
If you think you need more to complete it on time, do please say so. So, it appears nothing's been spent, and have you got the right amount?
Thank you.
Okay, to take those questions in order in terms of spend, I think the first point to make is that actually most of the expenditure was back-loaded in the first phase, because a lot of the initial work is preparatory, and that's where we've had really a lot of support, particularly from the university in helping to do that. And there has actually been some expenditure, particularly around the air quality sensor deployment, but that actually hasn't been built yet, so it hasn't shown up in the books, so there's some explanation for that. In terms of whether the funding is enough, yes, of course, everybody can always do with more money. That goes without saying. Having said that, as has been reported back from the conversation at the Assembly, it is also true that actually sometimes simply throwing additional funding at a complex technology problem doesn't always provide the quickest or the best outcome. And actually, the work that we're doing, as Councillor Herbert has referenced, it is leading edge, and we are following what's known as an agile methodology, where it's iterated and you change things as you go. And actually keeping a small, tight project team for that can actually be the most effective way. Having said that, I think that for the scope of what we've set out to date, this funding appears to be, we're on track with it. I feel confident with that. If the scope changes and we decide to do more or different in the future, then clearly that will be a different matter, and that will need to be debated further.
And so both money and resources still to be reviewed.
And thank you. Actually, coming on to resources, I think, if I'm right, there's a heroic effort going on from you and one colleague, and we have 0.7 officer full-time equivalents on this project at the moment, which I think is fantastic, what 0.7 people can achieve. But there's a sort of risk factor there, if one of you, for purpose, had sick leave or something like that. How do you feel about the overall resourcing? And again, I'm making a serious point, actually, because there's a risk here. Are we giving you enough resource in terms of people as well as money because of the importance of delivering this And my next question is going to be the timetable. So thank you.
Look, one point I'd like to make, and I think we have referenced this before, this is very much a collaborative effort. Yes, it's true that there's just 0.7 FTE actually formally in terms of the project delivery working on this, but we have had contributions from all of the City Deal partners and beyond. We have officers from South Cambridge District Council and from City Council, as well as the LEP and the University on the project board that's actually working on the tasks, and we have had input from a range of other people. So yes, the resourcing is lean, but actually we're also benefiting from a fantastic collaborative effort, actually.
I'm just going to keep going with about 6 or 7 questions. If I now go to page 31, bottom right-hand corner, you're going to launch it in beta, which I think is text speak for like the test launch, but that comes to the public. So the public see it first in, it all goes well, March 17. When do you think the beta testing is finished and the real thing is out there for the public? And what for the public is the difference between beta and the real thing?
Well, the way that actually a lot of apps these days are developed is exactly as you say, to put it out in a test format, you get feedback, you then bring that back in and improve it. So at this stage, it's actually very difficult for us to tell, and that's partly why we divided into 2 phases of the project, to get the test out at the end of phase 1, and then work on the more detailed design for phase 2, which will also include improving that app as we go. So at this stage, I can't give you specifics about how long it's going to take, because in part it depends, how that feedback, what that feedback tells us and how it needs to be improved as it goes, and also the technical complexity that's required in making those improvements. Sometimes things appear to be very simple technology problems to solve, and they're actually much more complex than they appear, and we don't yet know what they're going to be.
Thank you. Now if I can take to page 34, where I think this is a very helpful page because it splits out the left-hand side. You've got sensors and you're collecting the data, and in the middle you are sorting the data. And then what really interests me is the right-hand side, which I think you call portfolio of travel applications and you call public front door. So that's sort of when the first bit's finished, we've got all this marvelous data chunked around the computer system, and the public front door is how it actually benefits the public. And what I'd really like to ask you is whether we're yet thinking enough about ways of benefiting the public with all this data, or when we should start to do so. I think at the moment the app is effectively the one bit of travel application that is sort of been thinking of. 3 or 4 other things. I was at Dulwich in London last week, and every bus stop has a 5-digit code in London, and you tap the 5-digit code into your mobile phone, and bing, it instantly tells you, here it was Lewisham Green at P4 1 minute time, next one, Lewisham Centre 13 minutes. So that seems to be a really good thing on the mobile phone. You're standing by a bus stop and bang, it's going to come. And you've got the tracking. The second thing, I was in Basingstoke, and outside the railway station, outside the main shopping centre, there's a really good display with 10 buses, when they're coming, when they're going, where they're going to. So sort of dot matrix displays. I think it sort of crosses over to infrastructure. Every single bus stop in the city, preferably in the district, should have those real-time displays, when's the next bus coming. I've said earlier in response to Mrs. Blythe's question, I think every single traffic light should sense when a bus is coming. That's probably your area, and then should automatically turn green. Well, that might be Mr. Hughes' area. Are we thinking about that? And then I think there are plans that, for example, we have again these dot matrix information boards. So you're driving into Cambridge from the district. Shortly before you reach a park and ride, you can be told whether all the car parks in the centre of Cambridge are full, and then when you take the decision at that point to go to the park and ride, rather than driving into the centre and previously finding it's full. And those are only 5 things I can think of, and there must be others. So it's really, I'm not expecting you to have the list, but who is thinking about that list, and when do you think that list not so much can be complete, but can be started to be talked about in this forum. Thank you very much.
So, yes, I agree with you that the scope of this project at the moment is very much about is preparatory in terms of getting all that data, collating it, making it available, and then the way that it gets presented out to be useful to people is effectively something else. We have, as you say, got the app that's there in scope, but there are many other ways of getting that information out. And of course, we do already have various mechanisms to get that information out. We have the messaging side, but the key question is, what data are they displaying? Is it the correct data? So there is some work that we are beginning to do where we will be able to draw together some of those options for further discussion and for further analysis about how complex it will be to be able to display that information. So that work that analysis is starting to happen now, and I think that will be we'll have the first part for further discussion in the autumn. The point about traffic lights, signalling and the signals turn green is that actually sits within some of the other work streams. So I will try and give a comment on that.
Tanya, can you give a comment on that?
In terms of the traffic signals, yes, bus priority lights being looked at when it comes to the bus priority infrastructure and in terms of the Cambridge Access Study. What we have to be aware of is that they don't work in every situation. What happens if you have a crossroads, say, and you might potentially have a bus wanting to get through one side and a bus wanting to get through the other. So you just have to sort of look at the traffic engineering and traffic situation in any particular point.
But Tanya, you said that only going to look at traffic lights automatically turning green when we come to do a big project like Heston Road or Wilton Road or the A428. Or could we have a blanket, all traffic lights across the city? At some stage, I'm not talking about this year, next year, but at some stage, basically every traffic light, I mentioned to you, I think I misused, that there are only 6 to 8 traffic lights across the whole of the centre of Cambridge that turn green when a bus approaches, which just seems far too few.
I'll say that. I think the simple I'll say is that it's a good objective to have, but it's not that simple. And each junction needs to be looked at individually, and as I think Noel Tanya indicated, you need to look at balance and movement. So what you have to think is every time the signal turns green for the bus, all of the other parts of that junction turn red. And so actually what we need to look at is the interaction between the movements of traffic. And so in certain situations it does work, in certain situations it can be counterproductive. So it would be wrong, in my view, to say as a blanket approach we will always do that, because that will actually disadvantage some services. But we need to, every time we look at a junction, we need to consider it, and if it's going to be beneficial, then yes, we can put it in. But there are, if you like, complicated issues, then you need to look at that very carefully.
Well, I'll leave it for now, but next year I'm going to come back to the idea that we have a programme across the entire city of looking at them one by one. Thank you. And Noel, I think you indicated you might be able to come back to the November board with that sort of long list of possible public front door travel applications.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I expect to do.
Thank you.
I think we've got an offer of a lead board member on this subject. So Councillor Burke will follow this up on our behalf. So, Mark Reed.
Thank you, Chair. I think the question that Councillor Berkeley raises is quite right in terms of resources in this area. I think if we look at our peers, sort of Dulwich and perhaps Milton Keynes, and the money that they're investing in this space, and no the university will know about that because it's participating in the smart. I honestly think it's underfunded and under-resourced, and I think we should approach it as how we might be more and better. And if Cambridge is going to be smart, you should be leading the space. This is where we should be investing more time and resources.
Yes.
Councillor Bates.
I'll mention a couple of things. The first actually is what I call sponsored cities, and I think it would be useful perhaps to put the link in the minutes, therefore it can be accessed for everybody else. But also actually when we're talking about project calls, and I sorry, hold that up, it just shows you all the project and all the companies which are involved with it, and they're not they're not all councils, a lot of them are us in private companies as well. And I think there are, Milton Keynes is one example, but I think there are possibly others that are, if you like, thinking of going down that route. And then Centre for Cities, I think you find Alex Jones, I think he's the Chief Executive. I think those are the areas where we cooperate with other partners working delivery, not just for us, but for other places as well. So, but I'm also content with the recommendations Mr. Chairman has laid out.
I mean, it was the board that added this as a work stream, and it has huge potential. There was a bid that Noel led with Milton Keynes and Leeds, but sadly we weren't the winner of a one winner takes it all fund. We have got resources, we can expand this programme, and we'll take guidance from Noel and others, and clearly there's a direct linkage over into the re-engineering of junctions and those changes as well. So I've got on my left Councillor Burke, who will take a particular interest in it, but I take your point, Mark, that this is a start. It's not the programme, but I think the underlying partnership with the university really is an opportunity, and it's a question of building that rather than trying to just. There is no easy jump forward on some of this. So you're going to say one more thing, and then we'll move through this.
Yeah, I'll be very quick really, but I know that our people are working with Milton Keynes people, and what they tell me is that we are competitive with them because we've been able to leverage various facilities we have in the university. So we don't want to get the impression we're behind in any way, but what is coming across to me, and I'm no expert in this area, is that this has enormous potential. We could sell data, but we could sell systems as well. So I think we can see, I agree, the more we put into this, the more we're likely to be able to get out of it.
Yeah, we've got huge expertise in different departments that you have, and we've also got at least 50 or 80 different firms in Cambridge alone working on this. So thank you for all the work that Noel's put in and for the lead, and effectively I think we're moving recommendation C that we ask our Vice Chair to lead on this for the board. So we've got to note progress to date and a forward plan, and if you're happy to take on that role, Francis.
Unless Professor Centre wants to, or we do it sort of together.
Happy, very happy to do it.
Okay, so we'll do it as a partnership between which reflects the partnership that Noel's built with Dr. Lewis. Okay, so we've got 3 recommendations. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So we move on to item 9, which is also on a similar subject, in that we're covering another dimension of smart technology. So Noel, and then after that, Roger.
Thank you. And this is, as you say, this is another stream, if you like, of the Smart Cambridge overall work programme. But this is quite different, whereas the first item we were talking about deploying specific technology, this is very much about 3 separate areas of work to research and investigate and understand the potential across 3 different areas. I should say there is also a 4th area that we think we'll probably want to come back on next year, but we haven't developed it sufficiently today. So those 3 areas are, the first one is about research and data gathering in terms of where people make specific transport choices. And you'll see I've outlined in the paper that the Transport Caspol and Department of Transport did a national study around user needs and user travel choices. But one of the things we want to do is just look at that in the context of specific choices in Greater Cambridge, because we know there are some unique aspects here, and to double check that. And that leads into the second area, which is one of the research outputs to date, is that actually changing mode in journey is one of the real pain points for people, and actually simplifying that can help people make more sustainable travel choices. So the second work stream is simply to investigate the current legislative, commercial and other barriers, but also the opportunities to move forward with integrated ticketing and online ticket purchase. Of course, it's a range of different agencies who could be engaged in that, but really this is to set out the landscape, understand what an action plan might be to be able to move forward and make progress in that area. The third area is somewhat different, and this is really targeting the potential for autonomous vehicles, driverless cars in Cambridge, but particularly looking at the unique aspects of the guided busway. We know that there's enormous interest in driverless cars going forward. There is actually a government-funded competition which we're expecting to come forward in the autumn. We feel that Cambridge could be well placed to be able to draw some of that funding down, but initially we need to undertake a bit of feasibility work. Again, as we mentioned, drawing on the expertise, particularly at the university, where they have some experts working on this. So those are the three work packages that we're proposing.
Thanks, Noel. I'll start with Councillor Pickford.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, there was overwhelming support for this from the Assembly. There was one member that was concerned with regards to the work package, the first work package, and the data gathering, and why it hadn't been used in assessing the schemes for buses, etc. But we were assured by officers that actually it's slightly different, as much as it's much more general with multimodal shifts, etc. And the fact that cycling also is predominant in Cambridge. So it was actually a different aspect of work. But overall, support for this, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pickford. Members of the board? Councillor Burkett.
Very supportive, Chair. Can I just ask now, do these reports then get published and we can read them on the City Hall website?
Yes, they will be published. There may be, if we find that there's any commercial sensitivities that couldn't be published, then we would obviously look at that. But the intention would be to bring them back into this screening.
Only really, I think it's particularly relevant to B, which is about ticketing. I think it's all huge. London would be happy to assist us in this area. Very similar issues, and that was in the reason I attended. So I think we just need to recognise that we could get some help from Transport London, and it was free as well. That's to me.
Unlike buses, okay. Any other issues, points? I mean, again, this is a partnership including the university, because the university's got some leading world expertise on autonomous vehicles. And there's already work in Milton Keynes and other places, so we're keen to link in on that, and it also crosses over in terms of buses on the carriageway, because at the moment, a large percentage of bus tickets are actually sold as people queuing, and that causes significant delays. So we've got two recommendations, supporting the three work streams, and then noting that there's a fourth work stream on better digital wayfinding. Okay, so can I put those recommendations to the vote? Those in favour? Okay. So that's agreed, and thank you for both of those, and also for engaging so well with both the Assembly and the Board and many other partners. You must have a long list of phone addresses in your book. Okay, thank you. So we move on onto item 10. So we're coming on to the skills issue. I welcome Councillor Bitt, who's been doing some work as part of the work of the Assembly on this. So, who's going to lead on this? Neil? Okay, so I welcome Neil Darwin, who's the Chief Executive of the Greater Cambridge Greater Peterborough Local Enterprise Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. No cross-race introduction as well, which is good. As the board aware, this particular issue relates to your target of achieving 420 apprenticeships by the end of the first 5-year gateway. If anything, the target, Councillor Burke and I have been in fairly regular conversation, indirectly, is relatively straightforward. In that sense, it's probably too simplistic in some respects. The board will also be aware that between yourselves as an executive board and ourselves as a local enterprise partnership, we have jointly funded Form the Future, a local community interest company, to work with us and particularly to support engagement with schools and actually take business into schools on a more regularised basis than perhaps is ordinarily the case. What I'd like to start with is just reflect some of the wider skills issues around what we're doing, which may have a longer term impact on the apprenticeship targets, and quite simply where government is trying to take apprenticeship, which I think has a bearing on the target that we're delivering. Firstly, we're seeing significant changes to apprenticeships around the country, government-led, and a fairly fundamental shift to them being employer-led rather than led by the provider community. What that means from our perspective is we feel we need to do far more engagement with the business community, working with the networks around the Greater Cambridge area to really get business to understand where apprenticeships fit in. Our principal concern is that obviously Greater Cambridge is predominantly a graduate-led economy rather than an apprenticeship-led economy. And we feel there's a conversion point there to actually get business to understand what other opportunities are there as well. So that's an important point. We also see a very dynamic nature of frameworks. Again, there are 200 odd frameworks knocking around various different professions and areas. They are slowly, probably quickly actually, by government being converted into standards. Again, it's a fundamental shift, and those standards will be adopted by individual companies once we get into a levy situation in due course. Third point I'd like to reflect is the provider provision in Greater Cambridge. You have one sizable delivery body through Cambridge Regional College, clearly recognised there, and you then have a number of smaller private sector providers who, between yourselves as an executive board and ourselves as a local enterprise partnership, do have very limited control over where they focus, how many people they take on, and how it operates. So again, we're seeking to work with colleagues within the subgroup that has been set up to try and work out how we do try and influence the thinking and the activity of those providers. And the final one I'll say with a slight smirk on my face is devolution. Bearing in mind the conversations we've all been involved with over the past 6 to 9 months, what that will do to skills, possibly subject to various things, with an even greater control, potentially within the Greater Cambridge, Greater Peterborough area. Final thing I'll mention around the wider context. We are, as an area, Greater Cambridge, Greater Peterborough, part of a Wave 5 area review of further education going forward, which was just explain that. It is a review of further education, how the colleges work. I could be slightly more crude and say it's a review led by government to try and take costs out of further education going forward. Just as simple as that. And again, that could have some fundamental impacts upon how our providers work and operate. So it could see some pretty big impact. So that's the kind of environment we're working with. In terms of the Greater Cambridge area, it's starting from a low base, in my personal view, for apprenticeships. Comparable size cities are delivering significantly more. So we could take a view where the 420, and then Councillor Burkett and I had the conversation. Is it a stretched target? Possibly not. And actually, as part of the work here about doing the best for the community, irrespective of what the target is, as far as I'm concerned, we can look to overachieve, provided we do get the private sector supported, and we do actually start to get the schools connected more rigorously. In terms of Form the Future, just to reflect the work they're doing for us, we have no concerns whatsoever in terms of how they're operating. They're meeting all of the KPIs that we've set for them, some of them very comfortably. In terms of key headlines, they've now come across, met with, supported over 10,000 young people, which is a good start. In terms of the events that are on target, in terms of the business community, they're taking it to school in the quantity that we set them. In terms of the headline targets, so far 132 apprenticeships have been commenced, so that's a quarter of the way through the targets within the first year. Again, we've used 2014 as the baseline in the absence of any guidance from anyone else. That's an arbitrary pick, but it's the first full academic year before the city deal started, and it would seem to us to serve for this purpose as a baseline. So in that sense, we're pleased with the progress that's been made, meeting all the key performance indicators. In terms of the number of schools being engaged, currently for the future we're meeting around 50% of the secondary schools in the Greater Cambridge area. We feel that's an area we can push collectively. It's a piece of work my team will take on alongside for the future. And again, stitching in that absolute critical understanding of the role apprenticeships will play now and into the future, not only alongside this target, but for the support of the wider economy as well. Clearly as well, we will be bringing a full review back in November, which will be the annual review of the former future contract, and again we'll be able to look at how government policy is playing out in the next 2 or 3 months, which I think will help shape how we do take forward this piece of work into the future.
Thanks, Mr. Dalton. Excuse me. So, Councillor Hickford and then Councillor...
Thank you, Chairman. There was unanimous support for this with an extra recommendation, which I'll come to in a minute. We were extremely pleased that a figure of 420 has been put on this because it's actually a finite figure. We need to achieve it to move forward. It's a finite figure that everyone can relate to. We like to think of it as a minimum rather than a maximum, but we're really pleased the figure was there. There was concern about dropout rates for apprenticeships, but we were told by officers that within the county there was a 71% completion rate at the moment, which we felt was good. It doesn't mean 29% don't complete, but that's part of life at the moment, and 71% is certainly much better than some other figures that were being bandied around at the time. It was also felt that we should again make more of this, communicating to the public exactly what we're trying to do. This is really good news. We're going to make sure we do it, and we're going to make sure we do it properly. So we felt that communication could be a little bit better here as well. So the Joint Assembly unanimously voted in favour of the recommendations to notes, etc., the 3 notes that are. We had a further recommendation on the basis that we've had a working group working on this before, and we got recommendation D in, which I'd like to put to the board, and that recommendation is the continuation of the Joint Assembly Skills Working Group with any necessary additional resources allocated to it to support the group's work. And on that I'll pass over to Councillor Timber.
Thank you for joining us, Councillor.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to add a couple of comments to what Neil has explained. We have had a working group on the skills part of the particular programme for some time now, and one of the main things that's occupied us until recently has been the actual definition of what we are talking about and the numbers. I know Councillor Durford has also been involved in that dialogue too. And the result of that is really what we see in this report, that the definition of STEM subjects, which is subject to some judgment, but we have a consensus around the definition we see in the report. And the other thing is about how you define the geography, because you have 3 choices: where the studying goes on, where the apprentice lives, or where the employer is based. And we have, after discussion, determined that it should be where the employer is based. So that's some of the things that we have been working on until now. You see the progress that has been made numerically. The challenge, I think, with this strand of what the city is trying to do is that maybe unlike some of the other things the city is trying to do, the success criterion is extremely digital. It is a number, and that makes it, in our view, very important that we are aware of how that's going and all the things we can be doing to influence it. So, as Neil said, a lot of things are changing in the general sphere of further education and apprentices generally. It could be, it may be, that some of those things actually kick us further towards our target, and particularly with the apprenticeship levy, that could be the case. All depends how fast that really kicks in people's responses. And some of the other things may work against us, and it's a very, very difficult period, this 5-year one, over which to sort of say with a lot of predictability that by doing this, another thing will happen. And that's kind of difficult for us, I think, in being sure about meeting our target. Now, I think the working group's view is that we probably got in place a very good arrangement through Form the Future, along with the lab, to try and impact the student-centred side of this equation. That is all about the working in schools, the working on employability, and there's going to be a formal review later in the year about how that contract is going, and I think everyone feels optimistic about how that will look. But of course the limitations on what Form the Future can achieve are firstly that it's ultimately down to what students choose, and I don't think we can directly change that factor, although we can hope that it happens with good information. The other thing is that they can't directly influence, or indirectly very strongly, is the actual coming forth of apprenticeship opportunities with employers. And I think that if there is an area of this where the board would be wise to think about how it could weigh in if it wanted to be more sure of reaching its target, it is on the area of engaging employers and sharing with them the news about apprenticeships, especially as it was said, as we're talking in terms of a rather graduate focus employment market. So there are, we believe, we imagine, a lot of small and medium-sized employers who perhaps could have apprenticeship opportunities to offer but actually aren't, and the gap is some engagement, some know-how about how to hook up to that, so this is an area which we wanted to strengthen our capability. That I think improving that would be really beneficial. Now, the way that could be done is something that the working group is working on with Neil's team, Stella at the lab, and clearly the lab needs to be a main player in how something would happen if we wanted it to happen. It would seem logical to do anything more in harness with training providers. And it's that rather difficult mix that we're facing there, where we have one very big player in the form of the Cambridge Regional College, who has the structure, the capacity, but then also playing in the same marketplace as a number of smaller private, sort of described as niche providers, actually some of which are quite significant at the margin where we're trying to get to with technology companies who are themselves often niche players as well. And so we are exploring the notion that we try and create some sort of consortium which maybe could be hosted by Cambridge Regional College to enhance the capacity with the lab of engaging employers and stimulating the number of apprentices that get created to match the hopefully arriving increased number of good candidates for them. So really there are two things that come out of this as far as the group was concerned, as Roger's hinted at. One is that we believe it would be sensible to keep in place the group that has been created, because we're talking about rather a fragmented piece of action here, and I think one of the things that we can do is bring the players together and focus them on this. Secondly, to give an early warning that to the board that we may want to bring forward a request for some more resources to enable this extra employer engagement to take place. We can't put a figure on it because we don't know what it is yet, but it is something that we understood that we were interested in hearing about if there were opportunities to strengthen our chances.
No, I welcome that. I mean, the subgroup of the Assembly already had a big say in the student-focused opportunities for apprenticeships, and we haven't filled the gap in terms of working with the LEP on the employer-focused opportunities. So, certainly from my part, I think the group has an important role to play. But before we get on to the principles, I think there's some more that you want to say about Councillor Burke on this.
Thank you, Chairman. So really, I've got my questions are in three areas. One is the definition of our target. The second theme is the number, the 420, and the third is the funding, which Councillor Vick has just mentioned. And can I just ask questions about the definition? Because, I mean, the city, I'm an inheritor of the city deal. I didn't sign it, but, you know, here is the city deal. And it says pretty clearly on page 1, deliver over 400 new apprentices for young people. Young people. When I look at the minutes of South Cam Cabinet, 10th of April 2014, which was considering the city deal, it talks about 16 to 25 3-year-olds. Now, if I'm right, the government reports in the Skills Funding Agency reports in 3 age brackets. One is under 19, the second is 19 to 24, and the third is 25 plus. Now I'm 51, so I would get into the third category. So I don't see why, if I look at your report on page 42, paragraph 6, first bullet, bottom line, the apprentice target is not age specific. Seems to me we're not measuring what we said we would.
If you'd like to say the answers one by one. The answer from our perspective, Councillor Burke, is we can find reference and documents to all 3 answers you've given in terms of young, middle and everyone. The conversation predates me, predates colleagues in the left actually, and again, we can tackle the number issue as well. We still don't know where the 420 came from. We understand it may have come out of a conversation with the Skills Funding Agency. Ray may have more detail on that, I don't know, no he doesn't. It's a baseline, as Councillor Hickford said, it should be the starting point. This community should be able to do significantly more 420 with the economic base of how buoyant it is. The 420 we cannot trace. It wasn't a conversation, the left seems to be part of it. It seems to have come out of a negotiation with Treasury directly. You may go around and find other stuff. We cannot put it down in that paper. It's not.
I don't care about the 420, it's my point about the age bracket, and we're accepting a contract. The contract says we will do young, and you're saying here, not age specific. There's just a discrepancy.
We've got the original document.
I'm looking at the City Deal document. It says that by working closely, so page, what's the document?
Just gone on classified.
Probably, sadly, not all of the documents have page numbers. Anyway, so City Deal partners will generate increased demand for an additional 420 level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships over 5 years. The reference to 16 to 23-year-olds is that the government will fund the places for the 16 to 23-year-olds. So it's not giving, we've not agreed to an age-specific target. Government has agreed to help, but only in terms of the funding for the 16 to 23-year-old places. That doesn't mean that we are obliged only to be creating apprenticeships in that age bracket. It just means that they will only be funded by the government if they are.
You're looking at page 6, I'm looking at page 1. I'll leave the point out there, but I do not want in 4 years' time the government to say we failed to reach our target because they decided to create a whole 51-year-old apprentices, and they say we failed to reach the target. So we just admit that we've taken this active decision to focus on all 3.
If I may back through you, Councillor, what I'm suggesting we do is we have a conversation with the Skills Funding Agency while they still exist, and we find out what their considered definition is for us, because I imagine they were part of the original conversation. means. What government has been quite clear on in the last 2 years is apprenticeships being opened up to all age brackets, and we're quite keen to push that quite hard. So actually, rather than in the domain of young people, it's in the domain of the entire community. But I think we should seek clarification. If the board is accepting of that view, I'll go back and start chasing that down.
I think that'd be absolutely brilliant. I'll give you another thing to chase down, and you have that, which is nowhere in your report do you mention levels, whereas actually Mr. Sheridan has just read out page 9, where there are additional 420 level 2 and 3 apprentices. I understand there are 5 levels. Again, shouldn't the words on the page are that the 420 should be level 2 and level 3. Your report doesn't talk about that.
The report talks to levels 2 and 3 in totality. We need to make clear where they are 2 and 3. Again, we'll seek the clarity from the Skills Funding Agency and obviously the court.
This is to explain 2 and 3, that is non-graduate level training courses.
That's correct.
My next point, I don't know if I take an issue with you or possibly Councillor Bick and the working group. This point on...
And welcome their work.
And welcome their work, paragraph 6, second bullet, that the focus has been on the geography of the employer. Because what that means for South Cambridgeshire young people, or even old people, is that if there's a factory or an employer in South Cambs who recruits somebody from Leicester, we've contributed to our 420 target. So the South Cambs person is not recruited as an apprentice, if one of my residents doesn't get a job. And the person from Leicester either moves here, putting further pressure on housing, or transport. So I'm not entirely convinced about this focus on the location of the employer.
Either of you want to respond?
I'm just having a wave of deja vu. It sounds like free movement of labour all over again, doesn't it?
And we're going to shrink everything down to very small locations now. Europe, Britain, CB1.
I'm not going to go there. But I think that we felt that the essence of the city deal was in the health of the prosperity of the local economy, and the determination of the location of the employer was the best fix on that. The economy is already employing many people that live outside the geography of South Cambridgeshire and the city, and that isn't necessarily wrong. The one that the most difficult, the most easy to dismiss of the three is the location of the training provider, because that could be very, very long way outside the area in many cases, especially as the training becomes, education goes more virtual. But someone needed to make a decision at some point on a definition. We couldn't carry on arguing about that for the whole 5 years, and we felt the employer was the right one.
If I just pick up the alternative view, and you win with either way, you lose with either, the two options. The corollary to your example is that if a young person South Cambridgeshire gets a job in Huntingdon, which you then couldn't get counted against the target, even though you've got support within the community. So it should even itself out, we would hope, and we will make sure we track both aspects. But the view taken was that the employer base is important for the health of the economy at this point in time.
Okay, I'm happy to leave it, but I think it would be great if we could get just in on the thinking that you agree with the Skills Funding Agency, always a little risk matter. And I'm going to get really technical, it's my last bit of technicality, Chairman. On page 43, you've selected 16 frameworks, and that intrigued me enough to look at the frameworks, which are on the government website, and there are 203 frameworks. So I'm fascinated at sort of why we've got these 16 out of 203 frameworks. And what I've got on this piece of paper is on the left-hand column is the frameworks. And as you can see, there are 3.5 pages of them, because there are 203 frameworks. What interests me particularly is if you go to the fourth column, they're called sector subject areas. And there are only 11 sector subject areas, which seems to be sort of rather more useful, because there are one called engineering and manufacturing technologies, which is absolutely what we want, it's STEM. And there's one called information and communication technology, which is absolutely what we want, which is STEM. So I really sort of wonder why, rather than select these 16 out of 203 frameworks, which, by the way, we've omitted life sciences and chemical science professional, which I would have thought is bang what we ought to be including, because we wanted the micro detail of picking 16 out of 23. And why don't we just do the broad brush, 2 out of the 16, engineering and manufacturing technologies and information and communication technology, and that might address your point we raised earlier about the government changing the frameworks left, right and centre.
I agree. 16,203 was a quick decision, subgroup were involved. It didn't look around the full range. Again, as we discussed outside of the board, the frameworks are dynamic. New ones are added, others are deleted. I think we actually selected 18 starting, and 2 have been deleted. Skills Funding Agency is very quick to change and try and keep up the pace of the economy. That said, we should be looking at life sciences, we should be looking at other aspects within this. And your point about going that level up, picking 2 at 16, is probably the right way forward. We do need to review that going forward and bring back a proposal to you. So I'm in agreement that actually revisiting this and looking at a more rounded approach, and that perhaps when we landed on quickly when we were setting this contract in the first place.
Brilliant, that's really kind. This is a really helpful discussion, so I think we're thrashing this all out, and we're reaching an outcome, so I'm very grateful for that. So I'm going to move on a bit faster and move theme, which is, can you just help me on page 43? When it says at the top of the table, 2014, is that the academic year 14-15 or the academic year ending September 14? What does the heading mean?
It's the academic year 13-14.
So this is showing 13-14 and 14-15. Okay. And the contract with Form the Future started on 1st of October 15. So the contract with Form the Future started out to the right of this chart. So isn't the logical baseline the column headed 15, not the column headed 14? I think you've chosen a baseline which is dead easy to meet, because you've chosen the 71 and 14, whereas our contract, our work through Form the Future didn't start till after the higher one, 132 in 15.
We could believe that. I'm quite happy to be guided. I'm sure the subgroup will be quite happy to take a look at that. From my perspective, both as baselines are easy to meet if we do the job properly. Actually, whether it's 71 or 132, 136, we should be able to hit both with the increase from there. We picked it simply because it was a full academic year, and we could evidence what had gone on in the Greater Cambridge community before any of the support started. Do take your point about Form the Future starting in October. That's understood, and that factors into the position. But we can review that, we can take a look, and if that's a more acceptable baseline, let's take a look.
Well, I don't know if you want to debate that now, but I look across to my left.
We can't resolve it,
Well, okay, should we just carry that one over? Unless you want to comment now, that's a bit. What do you want to do later?
I think we should do it later, yeah.
And then actually come on to the most important thing, isn't it, which is the 420. I mean, I'm obviously we've got to hit the 420 because that's what we've contracted to do. 420, whatever they are, whenever they are, we'll resolve that by November. But I think also it would be lovely if we all set ourselves some form of stretch target. Councillor Hickford said 420 is absolute minimum. I think we probably all around this table feel 420 is the minimum. When we've bottomed out how we're going to measure the 420, which I think will come out by November, perhaps we set ourselves completely non-binding, but some form of stretch target that we feel we ought to attempt to do.
Again, if I may, I would support that. I think there's a large number that can be achieved. I think this is about, as Councillor Vick said, engaging the private sector correctly, getting them to understand. And I come back to, you've got a very buoyant economy here, where people should be looking. And of course, what they're telling us now is they're always, not a generalisation, there are a number of sectors suffering from skill shortages. Apprenticeships are a way of solving some of that in certain industries. So let's try and get that conversion point, but a bigger number should be achievable.
Thank you. You'll be relieved to know this is my last question. Page 41, paragraph 2, sort of fifth line. You say that you recommend the Executive Board notes the November 6-month report share the findings of the interim evaluation and ask the Board to consider the future funding position for the service. Now, at the moment, as a LEP, we've handed over, I can't remember what it is, a couple £100,000 or something. £190,000. Which is a fixed sum of money, and for the future are doing what I think is called a activity basis contract. They're running around doing things. And I'm very struck by the fact that up next door to you at Peterborough Prison, there's a shining example of a reoffender thing, the opposite, isn't there, which is a results-based contract, where the payment to the person doing all the work is linked to reoffending rates, so it's linked to results. And when we look at future funding position in November, will you be thinking of whether we should be funding it all on a results basis? You don't have to say that we think we should or not, but will we be looking at it and considering it?
I think the answer is we will be looking at it. I mean, we've learned through the first year of this contract, and we'll bring proposals back to the subgroup and onto yourselves as a board. There are a couple of different ways of doing it. And again, the points about the reoffending rates is interesting. I know there are, again, coming back to the 71% conversion rate Councillor Hickford referred to, this is always tightening up on that, and 71 is a good start. But again, there could be a target, again, non-binding one around how we increase that as well. There's certainly an approach that we're starting to look at that we'll do further work on and bring to the subgroup around putting the money around any money, I won't put a figure on it, around schools. And actually schools purchase the support we need. And actually what that enables us to do is get more leverage over schools working with the business community, which I think again puts another lock into that entire cycle, which means we get better outcomes. So we'll do further work on different options and actually start a conversation with the subgroup. Different ways of doing it. But the answer is yes, we will be looking at how we can tidy that up to strengthen what we're doing.
Well, thank you for bearing with me with all those questions.
Councillor Bates. Thank you, Councillor Bates.
Your mind is rather flippant, so apologies in advance, and second, just a serious one. Actually, I've got a new category for you that doesn't include bus and Alzheimer's kids. No, that's the bit you don't need to respond.
You're already right.
More serious thing, actually, in respect to the working party. I think Councillor indicated that there's quite a few, what I call in the private sector, in a niche market. And I think there needs to be perhaps some greater involvement in those niche markets, particularly this area with the private sector. So can I please, it really goes back to the recommendation from the Assembly, which I'm happy to accept, but I would like it actually being up that it's a little bit more connected with the engaging with the greater extent with the working party with the private sector in this niche market. So I think that just needs to be reflected maybe in the way forward.
Well, yeah, I think it's clear in the text, it's just not clear, it's not explicit in the recommendation, but I think given that we've had a discussion on other aspects, do you want to come back, Councillor Dick, in terms of how you might see any time scale or direction, or do we just leave it to the group to come up with it? But clearly it is about employer focus, working with businesses and networks to increase the number of apprenticeships.
I guess the history of this has been skills sort of fighting for places on agendas, dominated by transport matters. So I think you should tell us when you want to hear about the progress.
Well, promptly, I think. And also with a costed set of proposals as well.
I would expect perhaps the meeting after your next one can be sensible, and just to confirm the work to include a view of involving the private sector training providers is exactly the work we're engaged in doing right now.
Any more questions? I think it's really welcome that we've got a partnership at the level of wider geography. I think it's right that we review the range of scientific, technical definitions that we're looking at. There are major opportunities for people in Cambridge that are not being fully realised because there's a huge demand for people in research, in laboratory, in IT, and it is for people of all age groups, so that it's right that we take that approach. And that we fully support the continued work by the Assembly and its subgroup, and we have got resource, and it's a question and a judgment about how big that impact is. We want to achieve our stated target because we've signed up to it, but we look forward to seeing what you come up with as Councillor did, working with the LEP. And we want to maximise the number of apprenticeships in this area. And we still have a focus on people in Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire, but similarly, if that helps people within the LEP geography as well, we want to do that because we've got thriving industries that are short of people, and the jobs are there to be filled by local people if this is if we do more work. So I put the recommendations to the board and thank the Assembly. But before I do them, I ask Nigel Slater to contribute.
Yeah, I'd just like to make one comment, and it leads on from Councillor Burkett's point about the life science industries. Cambridge has a truly outstanding resource in the University Training College, the UTC, and that is exceptionally well equipped to train students for careers in the life science industries. And I'm sure they will be delighted to work with you to encourage their outstanding persons to come into apprentices so that they can follow through from the college into employment.
Thank you, Professor Slater. Can I put the 4 recommendations as worded by the Assembly to the board? Okay, that's approved. Thank you, and we'll follow that up the meeting after next. Okay. Bridget, your concern and some of the challenges that was also raised, which Councillor Hickford will report on. So if you make your point first, Councillor Smith, and then we'll respond to it.
Thank you very much for letting me speak at this point.
And thank you for your questions.
My pleasure, it's been fascinating. I'm not going to read my question, which outlines very clearly mine and very many other people's extremely strong objections to this proposal, so I assume you've read it. So I'll just give you some of the background. Page 6 of the local plan document, which Councillor Burkett has already referred to, says, Greater Cambridge partners commit to the delivery of an additional 1,000 new homes on rural exception sites. This will support the creation and maintenance of sustainable rural communities in market towns and villages. It doesn't say anything about additional being additional to the housing already identified in the local plan. South Cam's website, as of yesterday, under affordable homes for local people on exception sites, says, as part of the City Deal negotiations, we committed to providing an additional, in italics, additional 1,000 new homes for local people on rural exception sites. Press release from South Cams, well, I think actually from the City Deal, on the 28th of November, titled First Affordable Housing Site Announced as Part of City Deal. The first housing site as part of plans to deliver 1,000 additional new affordable homes through the Greater Cambridge City Deal has been announced. Around 18 homes to help people on the housing waiting list could be built in Litlington after council bosses gained support from the local parish council. Press release, 25th of February, titled City Deal Partners to Become Developer to Boost Affordable Housing. Note that, the City Deal's being the developer. As part of the Greater Cambridge City Deal, all partners have committed to delivering an additional 1,000 affordable homes. Cambridge News, 20th of November. University of Cambridge backs housing investment at inaugural City Deal Executive Board meeting.
The City deal will also enable the delivery of 1,000 additional affordable homes and 450 apprenticeships, with work ongoing to link local skills training to the needs of the area. Cambridge News, 27th of February. Cambridge housing crisis tackled by City deal partnership, promising thousands of new homes. The £500 million City deal has already pledged to build 1,000 affordable homes to address a major barrier to the area's future economic growth. So here it says it's the City deal which is building the houses. It's not talking about what this paper is talking about, which is it capitalising on houses built by developers. It says the City deal will be building the houses. So the key words are commit. Would you let me go on, even though the red light's on? I'll only be another minute, please.
Briefly.
Please, thank you. So the key words are commit, affordable, and local people. So when we were asked to sell the City deal to our residents, particularly in South Cambs, it was the headline of the delivery of 1,000 additional affordable homes on rural exception sites, which was the main sell for us. Today, you're being asked to renege on that deal so that the 1,000 homes are not delivered by the City deal, not additional housing, not all affordable, not exclusively on rural exception sites, and not for local people. Even if you accept Councillor Hickford's compromise, which was discussed at the Assembly, to only account the affordable housing in the non-local plan sites, they're still not delivered by the Greater Cambridge City deal, not additional housing, not exclusively on rural exception sites, and not for local people. I don't believe that either proposal will stand up to legal challenge, and I think either will undoubtedly do irreparable damage to the already sullied reputation of the City deal. You need to consider not only what the legacy of the City deal is going to be, but also what our personal legacies are going to be here. Will it be pride in having stuck firmly to the vision and principles of the City deal, which one of you at least signed, or will it be shame at having caved into pressure from I do not know where to manipulate the figures by changing the long-accepted definition of a rural exception site in order, I can only assume, to tick off a target? If you're minded to accept this proposal, please first ask yourself why. What's the point of this? Who gains from it? Certainly not our residents. It is the only people who actually suffer are those people in South Cambridge who are sitting for years and years on a housing list whose only chance of getting, or whose increased chance of getting a house is down to the City deal. This is a tremendous opportunity, and you're in serious danger of throwing that opportunity away. Please reject this proposal.
Thank you. Well, we can respond to that. Should I start? Yeah, okay. I mean, I think we've had one discussion in the previous item on targets, and on that issue we want to maximise apprenticeships. Similarly, the partners, and I think some of this, Councillor Smith, is about the partners in the City deal. Those three partners are partners in the Cambridge Development Agency in terms of affordable housing there. Those three partners signed up to this deal. But the government itself gave the City deal nil resource for this purpose. And so a lot of what was signed up to was the intention of the three partners. So in terms of the original document, which obviously the City deal has developed in terms of its agenda, and particularly through the partners, all it signed up to originally was that the partners commit to the delivery of an additional 1,000 new homes. So all that we've committed to government that we are accountable for is for more of the minimalist approach that was in the wording that's been given to us. But nevertheless, we do not think that the wording that we started with is the right place to be. So that's been raised at the Assembly. I just started it. So essentially, we are here and we will now discuss how we respond rightly to the issue that you put back, because the wording that came forward was not right, and now we will respond to that. So our response will be as much in the discussion that we now have as in my answer to your question. So if Councillor Hickford could, yeah, we'll take a report. So if Mr. Collier and Mr. Kelly and Caroline Punt could make their contribution, then Roger, if you, as Chair of the Assembly, also reflect further on what Councillor Smith contributed at the Assembly, then we will come forward with a proposal to the board.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, just to rehearse the purpose of the report, which was to define a way in which we could monitor this figure in the City Deal Agreement. And as Councillor Smith has highlighted, the City Deal Agreement explains that the target doesn't refer to affordable, but does talk about supporting the creation and maintenance of sustainable rural communities, including in market towns and villages. Officers therefore prepared a report that sought to define two things. Firstly, how and when you counted units, and then I think obviously in terms of the points of particular controversy, which units you count in terms of their tenure or type. So on figure 2 on page 49, the methodology which officers set out is that what you wouldn't do is start counting them straight away because the housing needs have not yet been identified in accordance with the trajectory. In other words, the commitment was to count additional units above the local plan. We are not currently in a position where we were to start counting all sites in rural areas. They would be additional above the local plan trajectory. So in terms of the methodology, the first point is that officers have identified a process in which when we reach a point where we are positive in unit numbers above the local plan trajectory, we would start counting towards that 1,000. That seems right and appropriate. The key point around what you then count, and indeed whether you count any of the units coming forward on sites that, because there is no 5-year land supply, and sites which would normally be rural exception sites because they were not in the plan and they were beyond village boundaries, whether you count all of the housing that comes forward on those sites, because essentially the supply of rural exception sites has been turned off and been replaced by a veritable number of market promoted housing sites with affordable housing on them. The report suggests that the net additional unit numbers, which is the total number, could be a figure that was used. Now, obviously, the discussion assembly, and that was one approach. The Assembly's discussion resulted in, and I'm sure you'll hear from Councillor Hickford about this, a view that that would be disingenuous because you should just count the affordable units on those sites, amongst a range of views that also included you should count none of them until they were solely rural exception sites. There were also some questions raised around the way in which dwellings on rural exception sites and indeed these sites were tied to local residents. From the inquiries that I've made, that is not a universal approach because at this moment in time, so we have no policy on that, but we do seek to secure it where there is a particular and identified local need. That can be evidenced because clearly general needs affordable housing also contributes to sustaining rural communities and so on. So the report suggested that there was no other options in terms of counting. They're right because we think you shouldn't count from a point of deficit. And I think that was a comment that relates to the previous discussion as well. But so we would recommend that methodology. Wait until you reach your housing trajectory. The suggestion, I think, was not supported in the recommendation that you count along the lines of the methodology that we set out, which was to count all units on on sites outside of the rural settlements, and I think we did a counter resolution from the Assembly to that. From a planning perspective, either approach is perfectly able to be monitored and reported appropriately to you on a quarterly basis, I think is what was set out in the report, and then published through the annual monitoring report as well as about City Deal papers. So I think that's probably sufficient to introduce the report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. As an individual, I was particularly vociferous on this subject and felt quite strongly, but what I'll try and do is report as chair and what the Assembly came up with, or didn't come up with in the end. It's basically what was the spirit of the city deal, what was actually meant when we did the document in the first place. I've had one definition that said just 1,000 new homes, which could be all market homes. Actually, the document is about the rural reception sites, which means everything should be affordable. There's lots of input. Councillor Smith's obviously shown some of that. There's lots of others that felt quite strongly. One member felt that actually, yes, we should include everything that's being built at the moment outside of village envelopes, etc. But most felt that this wasn't in the spirit of what how the city deal actually interpreted what it was meant to be doing. In the report, we were told that there's about 22,200 houses being built, of which 40% are affordable. And when you work out the figures, someone worked out in the Assembly, I think it came up to 922 would be affordable anyway. So it seemed, and I thought as chair I was getting some sort of consensus, that if we just included the affordable and counted them as the rural reception sites, that might be acceptable. I misjudged that as chairman because I asked for a vote on it, and there's 5 people, and I'll read out what it was for those that haven't got it in front of them. The chairman asked members to signify whether they would support the inclusion of only those affordable homes in the developments outlined in the appendix as being an appropriate definition of eligible homes for the 1,000 additional homes on rural section sites as part of the City Deal's commitment. I don't remember saying that because it seems quite waffly to me, but I'm sure it was something along those lines. Anyway, there's 5 in favour, 4 against that, and I get the feeling that those 4 were actually for not counting any. And to be fair, 5 of the Assembly had no view whatsoever, and I think it's fair to say that on the Assembly we had people without the relevant planning experience, and this was getting very technical, and therefore there's 5 people who didn't have a view at all. I think the board knows the dilemma here. I think it's been highlighted quite well by Councillor Smith. I think we've heard a softening approach from officers, and it's a question of how we want to actually define these 1,000 houses going forward. The Assembly obviously couldn't come to any conclusion on it, but affordable should definitely be in there somewhere, but how you actually specifically count them is down to you as a board.
Thank you. Councillor Carpen. And I think what we're aiming to do is either to move towards a conclusion on the wording, or if we aren't able to reach that today, to say how we're going to get to one.
I'm quite pleased that this generation comes after the skills one, because the skills one has shown us that the City Deal agreement, which is presumably like the devolution agreement, written by government lawyers at the last minute in a hurry, is not perfect, not perfectly drafted, and actually, as it happens, the word affordable doesn't appear in it. It is extra new houses on page 1 and additional new homes on page 6. So
well, except that there is some extra wording as well.
But if I go back, Mr. Collier, to the paper you brought to South Cambs on the 10th of April 2014, when South Cambs considered this, pretty clear what your paper said, page 16, 1,000 additional affordable homes, which is exactly the point that Councillor Smith is making. So I'm absolutely clear that, on further thought, I'm afraid I reject your proposal in your paper, and I further. Just like we just said with skills, that 420 should be the absolute baseline, we should aim to do better. I think once you agree the definition of these extra houses, we should think about the 1,000 and whether that's the right number. Now, I'm not convinced that we should set a new, and this is like a personal number, outside the legal commitment in the city deal, but we should have a bigger number than 1,000. I accept the fact we shouldn't set a new number today, and possibly even this year, because we haven't got any local plans at the moment. We don't have a mock-up the local plan process. But once the local plans are approved, which we all hope they will be approved, I think we ourselves, or officers of the Housing Delivery Authority, should think about setting ourselves a stretch target, just like we effectively agreed we'll have a stretch target for skills. And, you know, when the local plans are done, let's have a stretch target over above that and see what we can achieve. Because that will help our residents. So I will support the Assembly's recommendation, but I would like to have another recommendation that when, shortly after the local plans have been agreed, we think about a second stretch target.
Chairman, can I just point clarity on that? The recommendation from the Assembly was just about a recommendation. It was my recommendation as Chair, as say 5 did support it, 4 didn't support it, 5 had no view. If you can just bear that in mind. Thank you.
Just one small point, 4 didn't have a view. So it was 5, 4, and then 4. Yeah. That's what it was in this.
Yeah. No, that's right. Sorry, thank you. Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Mr. Collier?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got ourselves into a bind on this, and for that I apologise. I think as you quite rightly said, Chairman, the thrust of the city negotiations right from the start were we need more support from government to deliver more affordable housing, and we spent a lot of time in negotiation on the city deal to provide, asking government to provide mechanisms by which we could deliver more affordable housing. I think I also want to stress, as a management team, we are absolutely, totally committed, almost top of our list, is about delivering more affordable housing. And I think that's absolutely a commitment that all of my colleagues on the management team would share. I think we're also extremely conscious that the delay in settling the local plan is getting in the way of all sorts of policy dimensions, and we're keen to see that as a priority to resolution as well. For me, and I think in terms of priorities, you can see some of the things that we've already put in place. And I think the next item, when we hear Alan's presentation, you'll see that we're really keen to provide ways that promote the delivery of affordable housing, and we strongly supported the creation of the HDA as a mechanism to do that. I won't see any of Alan's thunder in that presentation, just but merely indicated as a commitment to our actions going forward. I think, as Stephen indicated in his introduction, I think we should see these things as 3 separate things, and I certainly do not want to dilute in any way, and I totally accept the implication here that we're trying to dilute an affordable housing delivery mechanism here, and I want to state categorically that that was not the intention. The commitment is still there, and I think the Cabinet report that Councillor Burkett indicated really demonstrates, and actually we're not in disagreement with Councillor Smith really on this. The indication was that we wanted to deliver houses on rural exception sites. By their definition, they're not 100% affordable. I think that's the other point to know. It would never be 100% affordable, but it would be predominantly affordable. The viability would allow some level of market housing on those sites under our current proposed housing policies. But you had a mechanism by which we could recognise and respond to government's challenge, which was to deliver more houses more quickly over and above the local plan targets. And which is why I'm really happy to accept Councillor Burkett. I'll defer to my colleagues, of course, but in terms of Councillor Burkett's challenge, we've also committed within the city deal to review our local plan targets within 5 years. So, and the original deal was talking about 2019. So we already have committed
to the review mechanism really early on in the process. We need to get the local plan adopted and resolved. I totally accept that, and I think Councillor Burkett acknowledged that in his recommendation as well. So I would totally endorse that as well in my presentation. Having said all of that, I think as officers would be really content to accept Councillor Hickford's proposal to the board, to the Assembly and therefore to the board. I think that as our mechanism, we can see that as both recognises the spirit and the deliverability, but I would also recognise that this does deliver to government's requests as well in terms of the global numbers.
So I'm looking for some wording which effectively follows up the proposal from the Assembly that you as Chair put forward. So we're looking to count affordable homes and developments as towards this target. And we're also, I think, looking forward to bringing forward a further report on affordable housing delivery. And I'm stressed by the City Deal partners because the government didn't give the City Deal resource to do this. The commitment was by the partners to deliver 1,000 additional affordable homes. So in terms of the wording, we haven't actually got in front of us a clear wording. But if I take a couple more comments and then I'll propose some wording, assisted by any proposals from members of the board.
Chair, thank you. I confess I don't have a proposal for wording. I have a proposal to accept Councillor Smith's question and accept that this is a fudge in terms of making the numbers work. I also accept Councillor Burkett's position that the document is quite clear. This is 1,000 affordable homes on rural exception sites. There is an issue with the framework not being in place, and therefore developers, those sites are not going forward and not offerable under those terms. But the reality is that at the moment this is just a fudge to get the numbers. Councillor Burke is quite clear in terms of the paper that's put before South Cambs, and I want to stick by that.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Bates?
Well, I'm just looking at the actual document which everybody signed, so my starting point is to just reflect on that to start with. And I read, plan for 1,000 additional new homes on rural exception sites by 2031. Now, we weren't just the three authorities here, we also actually government decided. So I think we need to just reflect before we make too many changes too quickly about including or excluding and how we are going to monitor that particular process. It certainly also further down in this piece that I'm reading talks about 2019 review, so I can confirm that as well. I'm obviously content to listen to the words, the possible recommendation, but my view actually is bearing in mind there is quite a lot of policies in respect of rural exception sites and viabilities and all sorts of other policies which play into that, including the local plan. I'm content to hear what recommendations, but my feeling at this moment in time actually is maybe we should just actually reflect and take a little time to actually try to get all the words. I understand that affordable housing. I've been connected with housing for many years when I was leader for the Huntingdonshire District Council, and before that I had a portfolio for housing. So I do have some historical knowledge of that. So my view, listening to the discussion, Councillor Smith, Councillor Hitkin, and the officers' comments, is perhaps a little bit of time here in making sure we get it right might not be a bad thought.
Any other comments people around? So we can trace why there was a proposal for a fudge, because the original target that was agreed with government was only about additional homes. But we, as a City Deal, want to go further than that and work towards a target of 1,000 additional affordable homes. So in terms of how we go forward on that, my proposal is that we actually set ourselves that target of 1,000 additional affordable homes, and bring forward a further report on delivering that. And in addition, Councillor Berkeley has proposed that we follow up after the local plan adoption with a further stretch target beyond that. So effectively, committing us to 1,000 affordable additional affordable homes, but that we do need to bring a proper sort of further report on that back to the Assembly and the Board. Councillor Bates. Just a point on that. This isn't I'm not taking away from the fact that our commitment to government is actually not this.
I think it's actually, when you talk about the commitment to the 1,000 affordable homes, it's clear in the document it talks about rural exception sites.
Yes.
And I think we need not to rush Mr. Chairman with this, because a lot opposed to having a target for affordable homes. It's actually quite where it sits. Okay, look, it's actually with us, with the local plan, if you like. And I think it's about whether it's in rural exception sites or all sites, because we all know about Section 106 and how those are negotiated across the district. Which brings me back to, I have to say, a little uncomfortable in deciding it today.
Mr. Kelly.
Chair, I think it's helpful because I can see the dilemma that if we justify it as affordable homes on rural exception sites, then given the current position with 5-year land supply, sites which were at the time that this city deal was signed probably anticipated as being rural exception sites have been replaced by actually 5-year land supply sites. So the same pieces of land around villages supporting sustaining communities, what are delivering are currently now earmarked for a combination of market and affordable homes. Now the Assembly and the discussion quite clearly drew a distinction between how genuine that approach was, accounting for them as non-affordable homes. It might be helpful if for the next board meeting we brought a more refined definition, because one could take and gave some choices, because it may well be that you don't get any rural exception sites ever again.
We have two currently in the pipeline. One in my village.
Absolutely, but in the context of the circumstances of the city deal, that might be a scenario that happens. And what I would suggest is that we work on a more precise definition that captures both the affordable elements of 5-year sites and rural exception sites, but picks up on Councillor Bates' concern to make sure that we are absolutely clear on this going forward, and rather than try to get something on that moment.
So I'm trying to help Mr. Watts as well, because he's got to be able to record what we are going to say. So we haven't got it written down in front of us. So I think what I would wish to say and seek the board's support for is that the board restates its support to seek the achievement of an additional 1,000 affordable homes, and that we ask officers to bring forward a report on that to the next meeting. And that is in addition to a number of other issues which the whole world has changed, and it continues to change in terms of affordable housing delivery. A number of these issues are in the hands of government, and as we've seen with the 2016 Housing and Planning Act, they make sudden changes which completely change how this is going to be delivered. So I think the 1,000 target is a sound target. And obviously with other things moving, whether it's devolution or different forms of funding or different partnerships with developers, we just have to restate our determination to deliver affordable housing in a really complicated environment. So was that clear enough, Mr. Watts?
Yes.
So could you just read it back and then everybody's... Yeah.
So, when you just said the board restates its support to seek achievement of 1,000 affordable homes and asks officers to bring forward a report on that to the next meeting.
Including to the Assembly. Yeah, there's a word additional.
And contemplates a stretch target on the local plan.
So there's a second recommendation, but that and to I think, sorry, Councillor Burke, I think that's premature, but I think what we are asking as part of the report is that we look at a stretch target after the local plans have been adopted, but we can't recommend that now. Okay. Councillor Bates, do we think we can carry on with this?
As well as it's on the answer to that, Mr. Chairman, is no. I do feel that this is a very complex issue. Affordable housing is important. It's important for local residents, it's important for all of us. So is actually, if you like, the additional ordinary local plans. I think it is perhaps, does need perhaps more reflection than we are allowed time-wise to give it. I would therefore perhaps suggest that we don't accept this paper as it currently stands. We ask actually us to go away to work with the Assembly and the Board to come up with a more appropriate, as directed by the new Director of Planning and Housing, and perhaps bring it back to us as soon as practical, which I think really will be the next meeting. I am still uncomfortable with the words you have read out, Mr. Chairman. Apologies.
Well, I appreciate that we're short on time this afternoon to resolve this, but I would wish to sustain, if I'm supported, a commitment to that the city deal has this as an objective, albeit that government never gave us any tools to achieve it. So I would be grateful if you could read out the words again. I will at least put that to the meeting, and then if that isn't passed, we'll come back to another proposition.
So the 11th
Yes. Yeah.
So the board restates its support to achieve, to seek achievement of 1,000 additional affordable homes, and asks officers to bring forward a report on that to the next meeting, and consider the stretch target after the local plans have been adopted.
So I'd put that to the vote, and then if that fails, then we'll come back. So I'm voting in favour of that.
I will support that, but I want to see a report come out pretty quickly.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bates. So thank you for raising it, Councillor Smith. As Mr. Corey said, some of this, I mean, I'm not pointing at anybody in particular. Some of this is around the fact that at times we focus on the targets that we agreed with government, but it isn't just about the targets that we agreed with government. It is the fact that we, as councils, need to continue to fight for more affordable homes, and the city deal is part of that.